when you go flip the nails and you throw them out,
Chief,
you
how are you?
get the barn down.
Good, I'll be.
You drive out on by.
I'm upright.
That turn.
That's what you can ask for, right?
Yep.
Doesn't bring aroma chili, he brings that cheap Cumberland Farm.
Okay.
Over hills across the way, and I could see from somewhere a flagpole. Probably
Yeah.
It must be 15 years old. Never noticed it, and I come down that street every day, a couple of times.
Must be pay raise
But
time, huh?
it's a white flagpole that sticks up above any of the
That's how-
trees.
that's
You see
how-
coming down Winter Street. It's gotta be on the top of it.
I had a 40-foot aluminum street light mast that came off the highway, somebody clipped it. I was gonna put it up.
Put magic, did you put magic dust in them or something?
Flag, it looks
I
like.
suspected as much.
monstrosity.
make 'em?
I got a custom flag, but
Voices.
she was not up for it.
By design.
Yeah, yeah.
Size.
Setting up the big table.
Full house.
Lena, do you have a paper packet for me? By any chance?
I had an extra one. if that was on there.
Call that. sir.
Chuck, that was with you.
Hmm.
Out of fear.
Bruce, Chris Cost said hi.
Oh, good. Tell him I said hi back.
Yeah, he's gimping around, but doing much better.
See what that's on, what are you talking
His last name actually is something like Oscar or something.
Yeah.
April 25th.
Yeah.
Here's thinking
Yeah.
another,
33 years a
neat.
nurse.
Your pension from us.
yes.
Pretty young guy to be having his knee
Nurses get a shitty hand.
Late, yeah.
Always have.
I was like, "I'm waking up."
Guys need to unionize.
Yeah, you know.
Honestly. I was telling them that in Dartmouth the other day. They're all straight up, even the doctors, you know. It's like,
They work you to death.
they don't care.
And
They don't care. This
Did you
thing's
eat
too
your cookie? I didn't.
it's warm in
Okay.
here.
It is, isn't
Oh, no.
it?
I thought if you hadn't.
Taking my
Oh, no,
coat off.
because you would
That's
be in-
I promise I won't disrobe
Oh, no,
any
no.
further. Keep that thing going. Hello, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:33 PM. This is the City of Laconia Planning Board. The meeting is being held in person pursuant to 91A. The quorum of the board's members must be physically present. We have that tonight, and then some. The public can choose to attend and participate in person or by Zoom. If something occurs that disables access to Zoom, the meeting will continue regardless. I suggest at that point, if you want to watch it, you can go to YouTube where we're live streaming, if I'm not mistaken. You go to YouTube, just search City of Laconia, and they have their own channel, which is filled with amazing videos of public hearings going back several years. I wonder how many likes we actually get. Anyway, if you want to participate on Zoom, the link is zoom.us/join, and the webinar ID is 883-2530-9847. To listen only, you can call 1-646-558-8656 or 1-301-715-8592. Using this option only allows you to listen. There'll be no opportunity to participate. To view this meeting on YouTube, as I said, just go to YouTube and look for the City of Laconia. If any board member is using YouTube, which I don't think is going to happen tonight, right? So we can probably skip that one, all right? Due to technical difficulties, we are temporarily, for the second year, suspending live, third year maybe, actually, suspending live transmission of city meetings on channel 26 because of technical incompatibilities between Zoom virtual meeting platform and the Atlantic broadband platform. Live transmission of city meetings on channel 26 will resume when full in-person meetings resume. We've already done that, so we could probably take that right out of the normal introduction. Anyway, meeting's been called to order. I'm gonna ask Ms. Graham to call the roll, please.
Rick Beatty,
Here.
Bruce Cheney,
Here.
Charlie Sinclair,
Here.
Rich McNeil,
Here.
Brett Belvin,
Here.
Mike Delavecchia,
Here.
Louis Joseph,
Here.
Sarah Jenna. Here. Scott McWilliams,
Here.
Peter Burnett.
Present. Okay, let's see. Acceptance of minutes. Now, normally what we do is we don't take a motion. We don't use a motion. The chair just asks if there are any additions or exceptions to the draft minutes. And if there aren't any, then the chair declares them accepted. I think because an issue has arisen about whether the minutes are indeed correct and complete, tonight I'd like to see us do a motion and a roll call vote. I will abstain from voting, but I would like to be heard in discussion on the motion. Does that sound okay with everybody?
You want a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes and then a second, then a period of discussion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. St. Clair and seconded by Councilman Cheney. Charlie, in the maker of the motion, you want to say anything?
No, if there's discussion
Just
on
move
it.
the question.
Just move the question. Go ahead.
Well, I think by way of discussion, all I wanted to say is, as I noted in the communications to the board, I think that the minutes are not accurate, the draft minutes that were distributed, and they're not complete. In dealing with the recess that the vice chair declared. So, and I think, had all of you seen all the emails that I've been sending in? So you're aware of the technical aspects. I mean, under RSA 91A. That's why I thought a roll call vote would make sense tonight. So we have that on the record. That's all I really wanted to say. Does anyone else want to discuss the motion that is pending to accept the minutes from the?
Were you intending to make offer an amendment to this, to the minutes as they're?
Well, I think what the minutes, all the minutes could legally reflect is what actually happened according to the YouTube video, which was the chair asked for recess. A recess was taken. It was during a public hearing. The public hearing was recessed. And then everyone came back into the room, and 10 minutes later, the public hearing resumed with me standing at the podium both times. That's what actually happened on the minutes. I mean, that's what I think the minutes should reflect. I don't know where the language came from. I suspect from city council for the city.
So the minutes don't reflect that we took a break for. They do.
The minutes state that the chair said, the minutes state that the
remember what I
chair
read.
said the purpose for which there was going to be a meeting. The minutes are worded in such a way as there was a purpose stated. There was never any purpose stated. I myself did not know the purpose of the 10-minute break until I saw the minutes and realized that the minutes did not reflect what actually happened. I mean, it's not a big deal, but obviously it's not something I'm going to vote on.
I believe we didn't have to because we were a legal break for consulting with our legal team. Is that right?
Yes, and it was called a non-meeting, and we're not going to get into that, but as I understand the right to know law, if a public body is meeting in public session and they wish to go into non-public session, there has to be a motion made, and a majority of the of the members have to vote in favor of going into non-public session. But the motion has to contain the reason for the break so that it meets one of the exceptions. You see what I mean? Because normally public bodies can't have non-public meetings.
So you're
So,
objecting to, I'm sorry, you're objecting to the fact there was no motion and a second to adjourn to executive session. or
Right.
whatever you wanna call
and
it.
I don't wish to call anybody out for that, but
What would you recommend as a remedy to correct the minutes so they reflect?
I would say it would just state correctly that the chair declared a recess, which lasted approximately 10 minutes, and then the public hearing resumed. I mean,
I
that's,
think that's what the minutes state that, don't they, or no?
no, not at all. So,
Go back and look at the minutes. Can anybody help me on that? Do the minutes already reflect that?
It says
Have a-
Vice Chair S. Susi requested a 5-minute recess at 7:49 for a non-meeting with legal counsel and returned at 7:59 PM.
so the
That's
part,
the sentence.
the part that's not accurate is she did not state the reason, and there was no motion. So if you just take out the part that says to meet with counsel, or whatever the middle clause was that he just read, then I think it's accurate. And anyone that wants to can watch it on YouTube. And I was speaking and she said, "Excuse me, can we take a break for 5 minutes?" And I said, "Now?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "You're the chair." And then she left, and then I watched the rest of the board go up the hallway, and I talked with Bruce, and then
Can I just accept that as a friendly into my motion to accept? And we just change it and just move on? Is that okay? Because it doesn't really change anything. It's just a term, or it's just words. Is that,
It would require removing the term to meet with counsel.
right, the minutes suggest that there was a discussion on the record of the purpose for the break. And even when we came back, even when we reconvened, there was no discussion of what happened on the break. And I think the minutes should be correct. That's all. Well, we have a motion made and seconded. Does anybody else wish to be heard?
Well, he talked about an
it's-
amendment
Amending the motion?
yeah, I accept that as a friendly amendment to amend the motion with that
to,
correction.
to strike the portion about to meet with counsel.
Right.
That's a
Because
fact.
you got the times right. Yep.
In fairness, Mr. Chairman, I think our clerk put in what was offered to her subsequently. And so, I mean, I don't think there was any intent to,
I don't wish to. No. I'm not
Okay.
Suggesting that at all.
I just don't want any
I'm not,
inference that somehow the clerk was doing something nefarious. That just is
I
not what
don't
happened.
believe she was. I believe
Okay.
She was doing what she was instructed to do.
Okay. And I don't think what she was instructed to do was intended to be nefarious either.
No,
It was not done in accordance to 91A, but it was not done with some nefarious intent.
and it's a possible issue that we should preserve by having a roll call vote. That's all I'm suggesting.
Have we amended the,
Do we have to vote on the amendment, or can I just accept it?
Can someone clarify for me what the minutes will state? With the
I
amendment?
guess I'd ask the clerk if she could tell us what that portion of the minutes would say if the,
Now you're to meet with legal counsel.
are you all right with that, Mr. Chairman?
Whatever the pleasure of the board.
I think that's fine.
Help me out here, will you, for Christ?
Brett, you had it in front of you.
Yes,
A
sir.
few moments ago.
Yes.
Can you?
Can I
please
read it
with-
without those words?
Yes.
Let's see here. Vice Chair S. Susi requested a 5-minute recess at 7:49 PM and returned at 7:59 PM.
That's accurate.
Thank
Do you all agree?
No, I'm just saying, that's it.
Okay, so the maker of the motion has amended the motion to include the removal of the middle clause. That was seconded. That's good. It's all right with the maker of the motion and the second. So roll call, please.
Biatti,
No.
Bruce Cheney,
Yes,
Charlie St. Clair,
Yes,
Rich McNeil,
No.
Brett Belvin,
I abstain.
Chris Wallachia,
Yes.
smarter than he looks.
Louis Joseph,
yes.
Oh, yes.
alternate
Are they all seated?
seated. authorities.
You would have 10 then. Good. Either Lewis or Scott would be your alternate. You'd have to appoint one.
Lewis
Lewis
already
Lewis
voted.
For now, yeah.
And what'd you say?
Yes.
Sarah Jenna
No,
and Peter abstained.
So what is it? It's a tie.
3 noes, 1, 2, 3, 4, yes.
Okay, so motion carries. Amend the minutes. Thank you for your patience with that.
What was the vote? I'm sorry, couldn't hear over here.
4-3 in favor.
4-3 in favor?
Three no,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
two abstained.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any presentations or extensions before us tonight. We have under continued public hearings.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion if I could. I'm not out of order. It's on 8. And that motion would be to move 8.1 down to the end of the agenda on hearings. And just start from there, which would be whatever the next one is after 8.1.
9.1.
Which is a table of dimensional requirements. Are you trying to move up?
I'm trying to move.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I think some of us suspect that 8.1 is going to take some time. And maybe we don't need these poor souls to sit here for hours.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, I would not, I think that's an excellent idea. Is there any objection to moving 8.1 to the end of the docket after 9.3? All right,
We don't have to vote on it. Excellent.
okay,
No
great.
close vote.
Yeah. All right, so we were going to have a public hearing on the amendments to the proposed table of dimensional requirements. For that, I will ask the planning director to address us.
As you recall, at the previous meeting, we had a presentation concerning proposed amendments to the table of dimensions. Proposals came from the Master Plan Steering Committee. Look at the chart, the numbers in bold are the proposed, and the numbers with a strike through are the current and to be replaced numbers.
You may have already done this, but will you briefly explain the reasoning behind the change?
Their Master Plan Steering Committees discussed this. As I said, there are 3 basic goals behind this. The first one is to bring Laconia into to make our regulations more similar to those of the communities around us and or communities elsewhere in the state that are our size and have similarities, such as Keene or Somersworth or something like that. Second reason is to bring more of the existing lots into conformance, particularly in the RG zone where we have an issue of very small lots. A lot of them do not conform to current green space and or other dimensional requirements. And then the third reason is to try to spur some development in select zones.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Trefethan about that? Yes, Michael.
Maximum structure height. I thought we were gonna come up with the plan, so a 16-foot cottage cannot go 36 feet high.
We have had multiple discussions about height, and we have not, between either the planning board or the master plan steering committee, had not arrived at any consensus on a number. So there's no proposed change. At this time.
Which doesn't mean you can't propose the change.
I would like to. It's just, there's 16-foot square cottages and they're being built 36 feet high. They're just not fitting in well.
A structure like that that stays within the footprint, is it generally considered to be acceptable and not an expansion of a non-conforming use?
Depends on the circumstance. If you are not expanding in most areas of the city, if you're not expanding the footprint, then height is not considered a problem. You could go up. If the structure is already non-conforming, i.e. it's already in a setback or some other reason, then that would not be the case. Then you would be increasing a non-conformity. In the case of some of the cottages that have gone up, they are located in the shoreline protection overlay district, and so therefore they need a CUP in order to increase their bulk within the SPOD. So it depends on the situation, but
And this board would still be free to deny it if, based on all the circumstances, it appeared to be an expansion of a non-conforming use that was inconsistent with the zoning ordinance.
If it had to come to this board, there have been some of them, they don't need any
They just need a
variance
building
or
permit, right?
or any, they're just going up and they just need a building permit, so they would not go to any board. But yes, if they needed to go to a board, then there's an opportunity for that board to say no.
What did you want to suggest wording wise?
Some kind of formula. So if you only have so many square feet, if you only go so high, whether it be 2.5 stories, 2 stories, but 36 feet is, I mean, you're only 16-foot square, 20 feet square. It looks bad.
Are you making reference to any particular spot?
Yes. Across from Guilford Plaza, right on Weir's Boulevard. When you first go past the Shaws, past the market, before the market on the left-hand side.
They have like a palisade
It's a little
fence along the,
condominium of cottages in there. And there's 2 of them now that are 16-foot square and they're 36 feet high.
near the junction of White Oaks Road. right?
Yes. Well, it's before that, actually, on the left side there. I think there's 12 or 13 units in there.
Yeah. I know what you're talking
And we have to stop it before it goes on because it's gonna get worse from this point.
The problem with lowering the height requirement then would also apply to structures that have a larger footprint.
No, if you have a formula, like if you have, a
Like a
40-foot,
ratio?
40-foot square house, you can go 36 feet high.
Where is that in this?
It's not.
Well, that's what I'm
Anybody
saying.
can go 36 feet.
Yeah.
And it just looks out of place on these small cottages. They want to maximize their space. I understand, but I came back when, to Florida for the winter, came back and there was a cottage built in that development. I couldn't believe my eyes, how they got away with building it. It looks like an elevator test tower.
Mhm.
And we have to stop it before it goes on because there's a lot more of those little cottages around and they want to maximize their space. But
How would we incorporate that restriction into this table?
just some kind of formula, but if you have such a small square footage of your house, you can only go so high proportionally.
Michael, how visible is it from the street, from the
You
road?
can see them. The
What I-
people in the plaza can see them.
See the second story?
And
Is there a fence?
there is a fence, but they're up there.
Okay,
The airplane's got to watch out for them when they're approaching.
all right.
So you're suggesting some
Yeah.
verbiage as to like 35 feet or cannot exceed the height of the length of the longest side of the structure. Something like that, because if you're talking about ones that are 16 by 16,
Right.
then they can only go 16.
And that would
feet.
give them 2 stories.
But if you have, say, your 38-foot house,
Well,
38 by
35 is the
28.
maximum.
38 by 28, you
Yeah.
could still go 35.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good, Brett. Wish I thought. of it.
Chief, fire safety, 3-story cottage. A lot of them packed together in condos.
No, I'm not, that doesn't affect us. What we're talking about with those, that doesn't affect us.
You could get a ladder in there and put a deluge gun on it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, what is the pleasure of the board?
Brett's suggestion sounds pretty good. Start out with that.
Brett? Did you want to make a motion?
No, I was asking him a question, if that was something like he was suggesting when he said some kind of formula. Because I said the same thing when this first came up, that if you have, depending on the topography of your lot, too, if you have a 40-foot rise in grade behind where you want to build your house, you can build a 35-foot house, even if it's 16 by 16 and no one really sees it, depending on the topography.
Although it
We
may
could
be
do that by
visible
special
Because-
exception.
yeah,
from the
because-
lake.
Because then I had said something too, like if we were going to talk about from the footprint, some kind of formula, then it should also be from the surrounding topography. But then also you can get into, hey, you can't be more than 5% higher than any of the structures that abut you. That way someone can't build something, 3 stories high when they're surrounded by ranches or something. But there's too many options.
Chief,
Just confirming, this height is peak of the roof line, correct?
Yes.
so let's not make this too complicated. If we could have a formula similar to what Brett suggested, that's tied to either the square footage, of the footprint itself, or what did you say, the longest dimension?
Cannot exceed the
35
longest
feet or cannot exceed the length or cannot exceed in height, the length of the longest side.
I know
of the
that would be
structure.
pretty tricky.
Yeah.
At 16 feet, you're not getting much of a, you're not getting.
You don't get a full
You-
second
You
floor.
getting
won't
a
have a
floor.
second floor. You won't have a full second floor.
Right.
That's why I asked that question.
Yeah,
And
But if you're living in something that's 16 by 16, I mean, that's a tiny house. You can put wheels on it and then I don't think the
Well, let's-
building
At this point, I
restrictions
doubt they're
apply.
building 2 stories if it's,
right.
I don't know, I need to see what he's saying.
Would it
I- I
make sense
wanna
to do
change
like a
it.
subcommittee type thing for something like this?
Well, there is a subcommittee,
Or-
the
there's-
master plan
yeah.
steering committee. And one of the things we could do, I suppose, is to send it back there.
That's what I was going to recommend, was that we table this item and send it back to the master plan steering committee for review and
Suggestions.
suggestions.
I made a motion to table. Is there-
We have a public hearing and we have people here for the public hearing.
Okay,
I would say have the public
That's what we
hearing
said.
and then table after.
good point.
Question.
Yes.
Are we tabling the entire table or just the height?
I think that the intention was to table this board's action tonight on the recommended change to the dimensional table. So with that understanding, perhaps then indeed we should have the public hearing. So I'll declare the public hearing open at 7:01. Are there any members of the public here that would like to come up and address us about this change to the table of dimensional requirements? Is it,
We own where you're talking about, but we don't want to get into it, but.
well, you can come
We
up,
understand where you're coming from, so, but at least let everybody make second floor.
you're just here to make sure we don't screw this up, aren't you?
No, we're here for some other reason.
here
We're
for another
hoping you
reason.
don't dislike us now because of this. so.
Get out.
Okay, thank you,
We're
ma'am.
not, we're not that building, so.
All right.
I think it's a good idea that you do kind of look into it, because there are a couple buildings there that they don't look like cottages anymore.
Would you humor me and come up to the mic?
Yeah, please.
And identify yourself so we can put that on the record, please?
I don't want this to get back to the association.
Well, maybe we could have one of those fuzzy face things put over your face on YouTube.
My name is Bob Draper, and my wife is Louise, and we own a cottage at 144 Lake Street, number 17. And we're going to be here to ask for a little increase in the deck, but as we're sitting here, we're hearing about, oh my gosh, they're talking about our place. And when we built our cottage about 20 years ago, they were only allowing us to go up. They wouldn't even allow 2 stories. So ours just has a little attic in it and stuff, and it's really one and a half story.
So there's a homeowners association already limit the height of structures?
Evidently not.
Okay,
But a year after we built our cottage, they allowed 2 stories.
okay.
And then somehow it really got loose. And I think, I don't know what the requirement is, but I think they built it 32 or 35 feet or something like that. And that was the height that Laconia allowed.
Yeah.
And, you know, they do look they look like they belong somewhere other than where they are now. And I didn't come to speak on this or anything.
No,
but
that's
I just
fine.
happened to be here.
I'm glad you did, and we'll make your comments part of the record and perhaps since the ward's probably going to table this, you could look into the association rules regarding that for next time,
Yeah.
because we'd be interested to know. We're talking about change that will affect a number of different properties in a number of different zones in the city, though,
Yeah.
not just that specific one.
Well, I noticed down the road a ways, there's a place, I think it's called Whispering Pines. And they had a fire in one of the cottages. And when that was rebuilt, it was rebuilt to look like the ones that are already there. Now, I don't know if the association required that or what happened, but that seemed a little more appropriate than what happened in ours.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. And thank you for stepping up, and we'll get back to you shortly, I believe.
Okay.
You get
Yep.
points for coming up.
Yeah. Any other members of the public that wish to be heard regarding this matter? Mr. Moore, do we have anybody out in Cyberland?
Mr. Chair, nobody has identified themselves that they wish to speak for or against it by raising their hand on Zoom.
Okay, so if there's anybody out there in cyberland watching this riveting program on YouTube or Zoom, raise your hand if you want to be heard. And this is it. Okay, I don't see any raised hands on Rob's shares the screen. That's pretty good. So I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:05. So did we have a motion? No, we did not.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask
Sure.
a question first. Dean, I'm looking at the table from the last meeting. And on the residential use table for RG zone, minimum green space, I have that 40 crossed out and a 50 written next to it. And the same thing on the non-residential side for the RS district. The 40 is crossed out and I have a 50 written in. I don't know if that was my preference or if, I don't remember, did we discuss changing that from 40 to 50 in the meeting? We did, right? Because you did too. Okay, so it wasn't just my scribblings.
That's the RG.
The RG on the residential one and the RS on the non-residential.
Okay, that's not. All right.
Okay.
I also show 50 for the RG residential.
Yes.
What was the other number? Brett?
The both of them were from 40 to 50. I have the RS for non-residential. The RG for the residential.
Peter? Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I've got a person from the Zoom that has raised their hand to speak.
Oh, okay.
Everybody close the public hearing. I don't know what your pleasure is. Just letting you know
Does
that.
the board mind if I reopen the public hearing for our online friend? Or I'll reopen the public hearing at 7:07:55. Hello, is there someone on Zoom that would like to be heard regarding the change to the table of dimensional requirements?
Ghosted.
Hello?
Frank, you need to unmute yourself to speak.
Hello?
Here we go.
Hello, sir.
The dive is what I'm waiting for, he says.
Oh,
So
he
he's
just
early.
texted.
He's not late.
Okay. All right. Well, you just hold on there, sir, and we will get to that one when we're done. with this
Mr.
one.
Chair, could you ask them to stop raising their hands if they're not looking to speak for?
Now, you
For the
people,
dimensional.
put your hands down right now. Yes, yeah. The hand raised means you want to speak at this moment, not sometime in the future. Okay, we got a response. I can't read it.
I
I'm
totally
closing the public
agree.
hearing at
I
7:00.
totally agree, Cheryl. It's crazy, possibly corrupt.
Okay, we need to disconnect that and move on. We get some.
7:09, the public hearing closed. Please, somebody make a motion.
Can I ask Dean a question?
Sure.
Dean, do you recommend that we table this, or are you looking to get that part approved now and table the height, or what do you recommend? Or does it matter?
No, there's no hurry to do this.
Okay.
The master plan steering committee and the planning board previously was discussing height from the 60-foot standpoint, which is allowed in certain zones right now, to another number, and that other number was never established in either place. the concept of this concept, I don't remember discussing that, but doesn't mean it wasn't. I just don't remember discussing that particular aspect.
And since this is going to be an amendment to the zoning ordinance, I think it'd be wise to table it, to give master plan another chance to take a look at it and come back with a firm recommendation
On all of the heights.
on all the heights, yeah. That's probably.
Some direction would be appreciated.
I
You
think
want
in-
every height.
I think, I don't know if this is the time to do that, but we've certainly discussed that in here with regards to certain sections of the city, and we could certainly do that on the old business later on in the agenda.
Well, you got nothing going the next couple of weeks. We'll have a meeting of the master plan steering committee.
I would suggest that you come to the master plan steering committee and
I'll be more than happy
state
to if
your,
it's not next week. But I'm sure that, because we've all discussed that, or a number of us in here have
Right.
discussed this very topic about heights.
Right.
So for us to be doing piecemeal, I think is crazy. And-
Yeah, but
Okay.
but not all heights.
No, I understand. I
You're
understand.
talking
Yeah.
60 foot is the only height that has been questioned
Well, maybe we can,
previously.
right. Well, that's not necessarily true, but okay, that's your point of view, but I disagree on that. But
Okay.
I
yeah,
make a
so
motion to table this until,
motion made by
I'll
Mr.
second.
St. Clair, seconded. Any further discussion
So when?
to the, to,
When's
we
the
need to
next
know when
master
our
plan
master
steering
plan is
committee?
meeting again.
I can't, yeah. Yeah, when is the next master plan? It's not one scheduled.
I would
at this point.
suggest the August meeting.
I was gonna say September.
Come back here in August?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd make a
Yes.
motion for September. That gives them leeway and.
There's no pressing need, right?
Right, so I would make a motion, we table till September.
All right, so the motion is to table
September 6th.
the issue of the amendments to the table of dimensional requirements till the September meeting, made and seconded.
And
With the understanding that the master plan steering committee will meet and discuss these questions.
I think given the nature of what potentially could change, I would suggest that you would have another public hearing at that time with.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think you have to have it.
Yeah, if we're here to have a public hearing on what you have right here, so if there's gonna be something different, we'll have to notice and
We're
hold another public
tabling
hearing.
this public hearing,
We're tabling the issue, right?
which includes the public hearing tonight.
Yes,
So we
Well,
have
we
to have a
already- let's
public
move.
hearing in the
yes,
next.
okay. Any more discussion on the motion?
We all agree.
We need we don't need a roll call for this one, I don't think. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Opposed? Looks like it, did you abstain or I didn't see your hand?
Raised.
You did? Okay. And it was unanimous then. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion or a recommendation and a motion that we move 9.3 up till now ahead of 9.2.
Second,
Is that the,
that's folks that are here for their deck.
Deck
For their
expansion.
deck.
oh, yeah, yeah. Is that what all these people are here for?
No, just these two, I
These
believe.
two.
Any objection to doing that? All right, well, then it is done. We're gonna call 9.3, it's PL 2022-0046 CUP concerning a water body buffer. It's located at 144 Lake Street, number 17, a proposal to expand the existing deck to 11 by 17 and a waiver request for plans and delineations. Is the application complete? Ready for acceptance?
Yes, it is.
Does it need acceptance or did we do that already? Needs acceptance.
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by the chief and a second from Mr. Belleville. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed? And it passes unanimously. Okay. We are looking for a representative from the applicant. Who is the
Get
applicant?
two.
Okay. I'm Bob Draper, my wife Louise, and as I said before, we own a cottage number 17 at 144 Lake Street. And about 20 years ago, when we built the cottage, between hours 16 and 17, they used to bring jet skis down and launch them from the beach there. And a number of years ago, the association stopped that. But because they were doing that, we built our deck smaller so that they could come up with a vehicle and make the turn there. Since then, my grandchildren aren't little guys anymore. And we have about a 5-foot round table on the deck. And everybody has to move their chairs in order to go to the bathroom or get a drink or whatever. So we'd like to increase the deck to be 17 feet wide, and that's the dimensions of our cottage. And go out 2 feet, which will make it a little bit easier to get around on the deck and such.
Basically, all it does is that we move it 2 back, 3 front. It really isn't 3 because we kind of make our stairs diagonal, and another 13 going on the side, which we're gonna bump out 2 feet. So in all, it's probably like 7 or 8 feet, maybe not even that they were.
Well, I think somewhere they said it's like 79 square feet or something like that. So we just want to make it a little bit bigger to make it a little
And
more
during
comfortable.
COVID time, we couldn't even put the 6 feet apart, and very nicely, everybody stood at the bottom because we were the old people and they were nice to us, but.
I understand.
And we do have a letter from the association saying that they're okay with what we're asking to do.
Okay. I have a question. So you're expanding a deck, not a dock, for one thing,
No,
right?
just
No, it's
a-
not.
just-
No, no.
Doesn't
And it's
extend.
already attached to the cottage, so.
Okay. How close is it to the lake?
I think
Okay, so they're
from-
within the
from-
shoreline.
from the water coming up to the beach,
Yeah.
we're probably about 70 feet from the lake.
Yeah.
I guess the issue that had come up was a few years ago when we came in and we were thinking about doing this, there's a ditch that runs down from Guilford, trailer park, I think it comes down into the lake there. And it wasn't on the map and they said we didn't have to worry about it. Well, things change. Now it's on the map, I guess.
I see.
So I guess that's why we're here now. I don't know.
And we did have to come for a variant when we had 20 years ago, we were here. For a
Okay.
variant to put our deck on at that time,
All
so.
right. Any other questions for the applicant?
So we're just repeating it again.
Okay. Well, you guys have a seat and we'll open the public hearing. How's
Okay.
that?
Okay, thank you.
7:19 PM is a public hearing on this application. Are there any abutters here or online that would like to be heard? If you're listening on Zoom and you want to be heard about this specific application, just indicate by the little raise your hand icon. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll close the public hearing 7:19 and I'll turn it over to Dean.
So the request here is for a conditional use permit because their proposed new deck will be 11 feet from the stream, which over the years has become a wetland because probably got built as a drainage ditch X number of years ago, and now it's got critters and cat o' nine tails and everything else. So
It's a habitat.
It's a habitat, right. We have no objections. It went to Conservation Commission. There are no issues here. So staff recommends that you approve the CUP.
Was there a shoreline protection issue? or-
They are out of the shoreland protection. It is strictly the stream.
Okay, great. All right, any questions for staff on this one? All right. Well, sensing none, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'm gonna make a motion to accept PL 2022-0046 CUP, the water body buffer for 144 Lake Street.
A motion from the chief,
What's that? But
second from.
I say accept.
Say-
Lena's yelling at me, sorry.
What?
I
Right.
second that.
Motion by the chief, second by St. Clair. Any further discussion? All right, sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their right hand. Opposed? Looks like unanimous. Have fun on your deck.
Thank you. We appreciate it, everybody. Have a good evening. Thank you.
My favorite place in the whole world is my back deck. I can identify with that. Okay. You guys have goofed me all up. So then we would be doing 9.2 next, right? Which is PL 2022-0045 SB 427 Weirs Boulevard. Proposal to dock the dive at the existing dock when not in operation to employee vehicles would be on site. And there's a waiver request for a series of regulations. So the applicant is here. I can't think of anybody better than to explain a series of regulations to us. So with that, I'll recognize Attorney Wood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ethan Wood with Normandin, Cheney and O'Neill on behalf of the property owner, the Slowey Trust, as well as the applicant in this case, the Dive LLC. And we're here because the Dive and Mr. Slowey have come to an arrangement whereby he's agreed to let the Dive dock the vessel at the existing dock when not in operation, and to permit parking on his property for employee vehicles. And while I understand that the notice says 2, it'll probably be a few more than that. There is sufficient parking on premises to permit that. My rough calculations of the parking are about 16 spaces. And I think the plan is to use between 4 and 5. The 5 would be a less than common occurrence, but I think the expectation is to use 4 right now, with the caveat that using 5 is certainly something that the applicant would look to. And again, they can do that without impacting the existing property. Because of the spaces, this property is in the commercial resort zone, and it is a cottage colony, I guess. It's not currently being used in that manner, and that's a decision that the property owner has made. And so what he is trying to do is make sure that he can continue to use his property as an income producing property. And this is where he's come to the agreement with the Dive LLC. And again, this is a situation where because of the nature of my client, we're here before you, but the actual changes on the ground are non-existent. There is, as I said previously, more than sufficient parking. There is private trash pickup, and the lines of sight to cross Weirs Boulevard from the property to the existing dock are some of the best on Weirs Boulevard with regard to where this is being a very straight shot. So again, this is not a complicated application, because it is simply to dock a commercial vessel in this location when not in operation, to have the staff who help operate the restaurant, park their vehicles there, and then go on to the vessel before it takes off in the morning, and then disembark from the vessel in the evening when it shuts down, and then cross again and leave.
Does it dock there every night, or does it ever anchor overnight somewhere?
The expectation right now is that they'll be docked there on a nightly basis. And again, this is a seasonal operation. Obviously, we're not out there when.
And will it ever be used as a restaurant bar while it's docked?
No.
No, okay. Those are my two questions. Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. St. Clair?
a question is that the line of sight is good there. I know that.
Yeah.
In the morning when they're crossing the street, daylight,
Yeah.
they come back late at night, dark. So will they be given flashlights or some sort of illumination to be able, when they cross the street, even though it's a good line of sight, dark figures crossing the road? So will they be given flashlights or something provided by the owner or the business so that when they go back and forth, they have lights? Or can that be done?
But again, I think it probably can be done. I'd note that when they are disembarking, they are typically taking the trash with them. So it may not make sense to have every person with a flashlight.
Somebody, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Or at least reflective vests.
Yeah, something. At night. I'm just saying at night.
No, and I understand that, and we're certainly cognizant of safety concerns. And if that's the board's pleasure, I doubt that my client would appeal it.
Thank you.
There's no crosswalk there, right?
There is
there's
no
not.
crosswalk there.
Are there telephone poles? The utility company could put a light up.
What's that, Mike?
If there's telephone poles, they can pay to put a light up.
I don't know if there's a telephone pole there, but I see people cross Union Avenue from T-Bones at night. And so because they use the parking lot across the street there. And quite often I'll see somebody holding a flashlight. Now, whether it's a private flashlight or it's something that's given to them, I don't know.
Charlie, are you suggesting that we put as a condition that flashlights be provided?
Well, some sort of illumination, whether it's a light on a pole or something, because where's Boulevard at night, you know, and I'm sure that the owners will say, yeah, that's a no-brainer and it's no big deal. That's all.
Again,
I'm just saying.
Do they have to carry?
It's not out of line really, because the rail bike adventures, they have to have, military terms, road guards. Someone in the front bicycle that gets out at all road crossings and stops traffic. And they hold the traffic while all the bikes go by, and then they get in the last bike and they go back at every road crossing. It's just a safety thing, because you're crossing, your business is crossing a public.
Are the dumpsters across the street?
I would note that the difference between that example that you've just given and the what we're talking about here is that these won't be the public that's crossing the street. These will be employees, and it'll be a small number of employees. And regardless of what the board decides with regard to reflective vests or flashlights, we note that crossing from docks on that side of Weirs Boulevard to the property is not an uncommon occurrence at night.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes.
I just wanted to add to that. I think maybe suggesting that is okay, but I think putting it as a condition is, then you have to put it as a condition for all businesses. We can't do one, right?
And I'm not suggesting as a condition.
Okay,
That was mentioned by somebody else.
gotcha.
I just asked the question because if somebody does suggest it, the representative here can say, oh yeah, we're doing that anyway. But that's a no, that's not, it's not a big deal. So that's all I'm saying. Because I'm
And
sure it'll come up.
My clients are absolutely concerned about the safety of their employees and are very diligent about making sure that they are protected.
So you wouldn't object to putting something in there like that they wear reflective clothing or buy fluorescent garbage bags or something like that.
Well,
Or put a light on
again,
the
I'm
telephone.
I'm not certain where one would find fluorescent garbage
The city
bags.
would have to pay.
Public service doesn't do it for free.
With regard to that, I doubt my clients would appeal a decision granting them what they're here for with that as a condition.
Okay, I'm not sure what the pleasure of the board will be, but I wanted to get that out of the way. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Yes, chief.
There's a couple a discrepancy that I just want to kind of confirm. Is this location where commercial deliveries are going to be made? So there'll be food trucks and beer trucks and
No.
things like that?
There are
'Cause
no.
it says it differently, the different ways you're reading here. That's why I'm trying to get some confirmation. Yeah. Is there gonna be a beer truck blocking Wares Boulevard,
No.
unloading kegs of beer, or whatever they use? No.
There is not. There will be trash pickup there, but again, the trash is going to be such that the trash, the dump truck comes into the property, picks up the trash, empties it, and then leaves the property. And this property does have a horseshoe drive, so it's certainly possible that they're not backing out onto Weirs Boulevard.
What about the honey truck?
Yeah, that's the only concern. That's
I'm sorry, the what?
the septic.
The septic pump.
So the septic, much like other boats that are docked along Weirs Boulevard that have tanks, the anticipation is that the septic would be serviced there when necessary. It is possible for them to service elsewhere, but this is clearly a convenient location. And we note, we did submit a letter to the department earlier today with regard to that from the septic company, which I'm certain he shared with the board here. The septic pickups are usually a 10-minute process. They're happy to put out cones, and they try to do it as early in the morning as reasonably possible.
That's going to be your biggest risk, because that's taking up, there's no shoulder there. And you're taking up quite a bit of room in the travel path. That's going to be your biggest risk.
They could put cones or something up while they're doing that. And I would say, from an environmental standpoint, I would rather see them do it at a fixed location at a dock than to do it with one of those mobile. There are barges that go out to the islands and do that too. They could do it literally while afloat in the lake, but better to spill on the land than in the water.
I concur with your assessment, Mr. Chair.
My God. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one.
Yes,
question here.
certainly. And then Bruce.
I seem to recall that trash was an issue with the previous incarnation of this enterprise. They're talking about just using bins. I mean, what kind of volume of trash do you anticipate? I mean, bins as opposed to a dumpster. Is this going to be done daily, or are we going to see just garbage bags on the ground? And
Well, you won't see garbage bags on the ground. There's actually an enclosed space for the garbage bins. And the current contract does permit more frequent pickup than once a week. I would anticipate, given that they will have food detritus, that it would be a more frequent pickup than
yeah, I would hope so.
weekly.
Many restaurants in the area have twice a week in the summer.
Twice a week.
Yeah.
And that would likely be consistent with this.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask.
Sure.
Attorney Wood, could you describe how the dive is going to be provisioned? How's food,
Sure.
beverage, et cetera, getting onto the boat? You've talked about the trash
Yep.
going back, but how does everything get onto the boat in the first place?
That's a great question, Mr. Trefethan. With regard to the provisioning of the boat, right now, the plan is to have the staff carry the provisions across in the morning and the trash back in the evening. And again, there are no commercial deliveries expected at this property. We're not requesting any. And the operation of this business is such that they're able to effectively provision the boat as well as deal with any necessary non-foodstuffs that are required on the boat by simply bringing them across. So right now, the plan is to have the staff carry coolers and carry toilet paper or whatever other sundries are necessary. And again, given the sight lines in this location, the plan to functionally make this one trip across and then one trip back in the evening, we anticipate that this won't be an issue with either traffic or safety.
I envision a wheelbarrow at some point being a good purchase. Mr. Cheney?
Again, I don't know that anyone's opposed to that.
Mr. Chair, there was a comment about one of the problems previously was garbage. There were other problems that existed the last time around. And I wonder if we could approve this conditionally for 1 year to see how all of these activities occur and whether they create problems or not. And then next year we can make an informed decision about what impact a sewer truck at 6 o'clock in the morning has on the boulevard, or whether garbage is properly hauled across the street, and et cetera, et cetera. It's all nice sounding, but I'd like to have a chance to look and see how it's going in the middle of 2022. And then in 2023, give final approval, assuming everything goes according to what we've been advised of.
How about this? How about that as a condition of approval, that they come back in a year? It wouldn't necessarily be, we can't approve, I don't believe, a CUP for a limited period of time.
Correct.
We can, but we could include as a condition that at the end of the season, they come back and they make a report. There's no reason why we couldn't have a public hearing, or at least publish the fact that they're going to do that so that people can make comments.
So there is a mechanism to essentially revoke the site plan approval. So if there are issues, then that would be the process to use, whether it's next year or
Okay,
5
but
years.
what I'm concerned about is, and I hate to keep coming back to it, Tower Hill, but enforcement, we can pass something tonight and then never hear anything else about it again until, something awful happens or a huge hue and cry occurs. And so perhaps if we included in such cases an annual report or something like that, that would be a reasonable condition that they could live with. We wouldn't necessarily, it would still require a motion to revoke their conditional use permit, right?
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
I'm Laura Spector Morgan. I'm one of the city attorneys. Perhaps I
Hello.
can help you with this problem.
that would be nice.
Okay. So you can't approve the plan for a period of a year. You could require them to supply you with annual reports, but you'd need to specify what information needs to be in that report. And honestly, there's nothing you can do about it if that report comes back and shows problems. That becomes an enforcement or a revocation thing.
But this board could indeed ask the board to ask the staff to look into it, and it could lead to potentially a revocation of the conditional use permit.
You can always ask staff to look into violations, and there are specific circumstances under which you can revoke the approval. Plain vanilla, I'm not complying with the conditions of approval isn't one of those situations, but there are situations where it can happen.
So we'd have to specify pretty carefully what the conditions are.
Yes,
Right, I understand that.
thank you.
So just to having an annual review doesn't help. We need to specify what they're supposed to report to us about, I would guess.
Well, I think having no matter how we do the enforcement piece of it, having clear recommendations in our CUP, clear understanding by the applicant and the attorney to know that these things are required, and these are what, not be watching for, that's the wrong terminology, but these are the expectations, just like we did. You brought up an applicant we had recently on one, which it actually made all the difference in the world.
Right.
You know, it was clear, it was profoundly clear and concise that this is what the expectations were, and it worked. You know, and that, in that case that you brought up a minute ago, it worked. So, I mean, that would be my recommendation, you know, whatever we do.
All right. Are there any more questions for the,
I just have a question, I guess, to touch on that. I called the PD and the fire department today just to see, I guess, overall what the complaints were. And the only thing that I heard from the last location was trash. So I guess I don't know what other issues there were.
right?
But this is a whole totally different location. This is on
Right,
private
right.
versus a city dock.
But I'm just wondering what are we monitoring? What are we trying to look for? I guess outside of that.
I don't know. I think probably, if you don't have any more questions for the applicant, I'll open it. Would you do? Okay, sure.
Attorney Wood, I'm not sure that I 100% agree with your statement about visibility from the driveway, but I believe the visibility could be improved greatly if there was some vegetation removed right along the roadway in both directions, and all of that land is owned by the Slowly Realty Trust. So as you particularly come out of as you're coming from, say, the White Oaks intersection, the first driveway, if you're trying to exit out of that driveway, there are bushes that are pretty close to the road in both directions. If they were trimmed and kept trimmed, I think visibility would be much improved and would be maybe not as great as you stated, but would be very good.
Okay. Certainly with regard to trimming, I don't foresee trimming bushes to be an issue. We obviously, to the extent you are requiring us to remove vegetation and we're within the wetland, the lake shore.
No, this would be on the
Okay.
driveway side.
Okay.
Along the road. basically.
Yeah, I don't foresee an issue to make sure the property is kept neat and the vegetation is trimmed.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Since none, then we'll open the public hearing at 7:43. Are there any abutters here? Are there any members of the public? Are there any attorneys for the city?
So I happen to be here on another matter. I'm not here specifically for this, but I do have a question about one of the issues that did arise last time we did this. And that is how many boats are going to be docked there? Because last time we had a great debate about whether the dive was the one boat or the boat and its supporting vessels. So I just think it's important to clear that up now so the city knows how many boats to expect to be docked there.
I had no idea that there
I have a
were
question.
support vessels.
Ma'am, attorney, I'm sorry. Can I ask a question?
You certainly may.
Does it matter if it's on a private dock and it's on the water? Does it fall under our jurisdiction to ask that question?
I think it absolutely falls within your jurisdiction to ask that question.
Because
You're approving a site plan for this entity, and I think you need to know how many boats are going to be docked there.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may point out, there were a couple of letters, I believe, that were submitted. One, I think, was in support of this application. The other was, in my opinion, anonymous, and I believe the board should not even consider it. It was simply signed a fan of the dive. Did everybody see those? Or
I did, yes. I
think
figured we'd
that
put them in the record.
should be rejected. We don't consider anonymous
That's
letters of support or opposition.
wise. maybe after we do the public hearing, we'll get those, at least the one. I wasn't aware that there was another one other than the one we got today. Previous month. Okay, right. That's already in the record. Right, from last, that's already in the record. So yes, there's a notice to the public. If you're going to make a comment about an application, please state your name and address for the record. Okay, so yes, Rob, there's somebody online that wants to, all right, so I opened the public hearing, did I not, at 7:43? And anybody here in person that wants to be heard about this application? All right, there's no one here, so Rob, who have we got on?
Don't you know?
Walter, you need to unmute yourself to speak.
I did. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my name is Walter Santoro. I've been a Laconia property owner since about 1996. And for the time that I've been on the lake, I've never seen any operation as well run as the dive. I've been on there numerous times, never ever saw any altercations, never saw any fights, never saw any problems at all. Probably 90% of the people that are on the dive are ordering food. So it's not like a floating bar. It's more restaurant than anything else. So I would like to speak in favor of this application. They run a great operation. It's mostly family run, and I would love to see them flourish and prosper. They do a great job with what they do. They employ a lot of people. Their kids all work on the dive too as support staff, and they're great people. So I would really like to speak in favor of this. I just really enjoy the atmosphere there, and I'd like you guys to approve it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Cyberland? Oh, yes.
There's quite a list, so you have to bear with me as we go through each one.
Okay. So as each one comes up, if they would be so kind as to identify themselves.
You'll have to tell us who's next, Rob.
Right.
Brian is next.
Brian, you're up next. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Brian Smith. I live at 507 Weirs Boulevard. I've lived here about 3.5, 4 years. And I've never had any problems with the dive being there. And I did meet Jamie and his wife Betsy, and very nice people. All the people that work on the dive are excellent. There's never been any issues with traffic or blocking traffic or causing any problems whatsoever. So yes, I would like to see this approved also. They're very good people, and I think it's a very good business to have on a lake. It's very, enterprising. I give Jamie a lot of credit with his design. He's very safety oriented, and he does a fine job. And yes, I would also like to see this approved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Rob, who's our next contestant?
Jimmy will be up next.
Hello?
Jimmy.
That was good.
Hello, can you hear me?
How are you?
Good. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for letting me talk for a minute. Yeah, my name is Jimmy Kalaran. I am the manager for the dive. I came on board last year, so I'm very well aware of the property that we're going to be docking at. But basically, I just wanted to come on behalf of the employees, and just say how eager we are to open it up. We have a short season, to begin with, which has already been shortened, by the inability to open, a few weeks ago. And then, weather permitting, it even cuts us down a few more days. So on behalf of the employees, I know we're all eager to start working. We have a lot of great kids that come home for the summer from college, from the Laconia, Guilford area. And and the other thing I just wanted to say is, I can't tell you the number of people who have come up to me in the last several weeks asking me where the dive is. and where we're going to be, when we're going to open. I mean, it's just person after person, and it's not just adults either. It's also like the gentleman said earlier, we have a lot of families on there. So yeah, I just wanted to come on briefly and just say we're looking forward to opening soon. So I hope this works out as well. Thanks.
Jimmy, how many support vessels does your aircraft carrier have?
The aircraft carrier, yeah. Well, I know we have one support vessel. Whether or not that'll be docked right with the dive, I'm not sure. That's something Jamie could answer, the owner. But we have at least one.
Okay. And what does the support vessel do?
Well, the support vessel, basically, I know we have a vessel that will pick people up. Like if we're docked off the sandbar, off the Margate, and someone doesn't have a boat. Last year, we were able to pick them up. Whether or not Jamie plans on doing that again this year, I am not sure. But basically, that was, and it also took staff to and from the boat if a staff member wasn't allowed to get on or wasn't getting on at the dock. Most of the time, that was the case.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, do we have anyone else, Rob? Yes? Rob shaking it, nodding his head vociferously.
Frank will be next.
Frank? Hello, Frank.
How are you guys? If you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I live in Guilford on Scenic Drive. I am the author of the Dive Fan Note. So I do want that. I can read it back into the notes if you want for the meeting, or it can be entered in as me, since it was, I guess, previously I didn't sign my name, but I want that in the record. So
the one that was signed Dive Fan?
Correct.
I see. What's your last name, Frank?
Donlin.
Okay. And where do you live?
Guilford.
In Guilford. Okay. Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add to your email?
Yeah, I mean, I know these two. I've known them for a while. They run a very clean business, and they just want an even hand. Same thing that the tiki boats get, same thing the Mount gets. They're not asking for any special treatment, but they're also asking for equal treatment and to be fair. And it really doesn't seem like this board has been very fair to them, to be honest with you. It seems like sort of a witch hunt for what can we do to not have them open. I mean, that's what the all of the Winnipesaukee boat pages and everywhere that I talk to at restaurants, everybody is a fan and everybody is seeing this board as a roadblock, and everybody's wondering why. So I really think that you're kind of hindering a small business that has a very short season for really no reasons. So from a lot of fans and a lot of people, we're really looking for you guys to kind of limit that and let them operate.
Thank you, Frank. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Who's next in Cyberland?
Jeffrey is up next.
Jeffrey, can you hear me?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, indeed.
Hey, how are you? My name is Jeffrey Moore and I live at 72 Landing Lane here in Laconia. I've been a citizen for 50 years. During the last meeting, I noticed that I heard one board member say that this was a very controversial business, and another one said that no one really wants them on this lake. Just coming from a board which is supposed to be non-biased, these statements seemed a little swaying, and I was just wondering, since personal opinions aren't for a particular business should not be part of any decision, I wasn't sure what the rules were for the board, but was just wondering if those board members should be, recuse themselves or not.
Thank you for sharing your personal opinion. Anything else? Frank? I mean, Jeff. Anything else, sir?
No, that's it.
Thank you very much. Rob,
Tim is up next.
Tim. Enter and sign in, please.
Hi, this is Tim Piano, and I'm here with my wife Carol Piano. We're at 507 Wares Boulevard. We just wanted to echo a lot of the things that have already been said, that this is a really well-run business. We are not very far at all from where they dock, and we have seen absolutely no problems whatsoever with their use of that dock. So, and we really look forward to seeing them very soon for this upcoming season. Don't need to say any much more because most of it's already been said, and I want to respect your time.
Well, good. Thank you. It is very good to hear your opinion. Anyone else?
Kirsten is next.
Hello, Kirsten.
So it's giving me an error when she is trying to talk, saying that Kirsten is using an older version of Zoom, which requires me to promote her to a panelist in order to speak.
Go for it. Congratulations. You're now a panelist. Kirsten, can you hear me? I guess we still can't hear her.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, we can.
Hi, sorry about all that.
No problem. You got
Well,
to
my name-
upgrade your software.
Apparently, huh?
Yeah.
So my name is Kirsten. I grew up and live in Belmont, New Hampshire. Originally, I got introduced to the dive by friends and I was a patron. And then I graduated to working on there last year. And I agree and concur with everybody else. It's a great run business. Jamie and his wife are amazing people to work for, work with. They are upstanding citizens. And I also agree that you should let this pass.
Well, thank you. I hope you have a flashlight.
You need a last name.
Oh, Kirsten, yes. Could you?
My
please-
last name is Stinson.
Stinson?
Stinson, yes. And honestly, speaking to that matter, I never saw an issue or any kind of danger crossing the street. Usually when we got in, it was still, the sun was still out. We weren't coming in at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Typically speaking, it was like 7 p.m. The sun was still up. I agree with the safety aspect and your concerns. I understand that. However, I don't ever feel like this was really a safety risk imposed on us at all.
Good. That is really good news. Thank you. Mr. Mora? One more?
No, it takes me a second to put her
Oh,
back.
I see. You have to demote her.
Daniel's Galaxy is next.
Daniel's Galaxy. I'm assuming that's not in outer space and it's a reference to his phone. Daniel? Are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm fine. What's your last name and your address for the record, please?
Last name is O'Hara and 311 Elm Street, Laconia.
Well, what would you like to say about this application?
Just echoing what others have said, the dive, as Jamie and Betsy run a tight ship. That's a great business. Having been on several times myself, I'm just wondering if the restrictions or requirements that you're asking for are going to be imposed upon every other person that crosses that street. Or, I mean, it like, I don't know if that's on purpose, but it seems like you're singling them out. I mean, I could be wrong. This is one of the first City of Laconia meetings I've attended.
Well, I don't think so. Public safety is one of the things that we discussed. We are, I think, I'm speaking for the board here, reasonably satisfied that all precautions will be taken to avoid any collisions.
I agree with that too. Jamie and Betsy are also very reasonable people. If you ask them to have, to have the staff look both ways before they cross the street, they will have the staff do that. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for expressing your opinion this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, nobody else has raised a hand to indicate that they wish to speak.
All right, last call. All right, then we'll close the public hearing at 8 o'clock. Staff?
A couple of things here. One of the people on the public hearing talked about a support boat picking up passengers. And I'd like to ask where that is being done from or to, please.
I have no information on that. I am unaware of people being picked up other than what was represented at this time. And again, the picking up of people is not part of the actual dives operation. The fact that they may have accommodated people in the past is not what's before this board at this time.
I agree. But my reason for asking is if the pickup is being done at another dock, it could constitute a necessity for them to amend their site plan to be running that operation from that dock. And that's the only reason I'm asking.
Well,
and if it's occurring in Laconia, we would, to echo a couple of the comments that were made, we would like to equally enforce our rules and regulations across the board, and that would include anybody else that is.
Understood. And again, I have no information on that at this time, so I am unable to provide the board with anything.
And another question I have is, when they were using this dock last fall, I was not aware that they were operating the business. I thought that the boat was docked there basically at end of season and was being repaired at. I did not know that it was leaving the dock during the day and doing its business and coming back to the dock last fall while it was there.
Again, I don't have any information about their operations last year. I know, generally speaking, the season ended a little bit early last year. So I don't know what the time frame was based on the letter that Mr. Slowey received. I think that was after operation had ceased, but I have no information about the use of the dock last year.
Thank you. And I mentioned that only because there was a couple of comments from people in the public that there have been no issues with the operation of the dive at this location. And I don't believe that the dive as a restaurant was operating at this location last fall. It was docked there, but it was not operating. So I think there's a distinction to be made there, that to say there were no problems last year when they were not operating at this dock last year. I think we need to understand the distinction. Let me just briefly go through the conditions that we are suggesting. That all commercial loading or unloading at the site must be done in the driveway and not in any travel lanes. That has been represented by the applicant that would occur, and Weirs Boulevard cannot be blocked. I guess the exception to that will be the possibility of the septic pump operation. There'll be no maintenance of any commercial vessels. Again, this is a private dock. This is not a marina or a work yard or any of those things. Any trash or waste must be enclosed and picked up and removed by the commercial hauler. The applicant is represented, and we have seen there is an existing enclosure on the property, and that's where the trash is going to go until it needs to be removed. We have no issues with that. All parking must meet zoning requirements and be delineated on the site. This is the same requirement that we impose on any application. And there'll be no loading or unloading of passengers at this location, which has been represented by the applicant. I do want to point out to the board that one of the reasons that we are being specific about parking is there is an existing cottage colony on this property as well. That use will continue. It may be suspended at the moment, but that use will continue. And now you are adding an additional use to the property. So at any moment, the current owner or a subsequent owner of the property could decide to start operating the cottage colonies, and they will need parking appropriately for this 5 units of housing on that property. So they will need a minimum of 8 parking spaces to run 5 units of housing, and that could occur. That could start next week, that could start next month, that could start next year, and no further approvals of any kind from anybody would be required for them to start the operation of the cottage colony again. So this is why we are, this is an additional request. This is an additional use of the property, and none of the existing uses go away. So therefore, none of the existing requirements go away. We are adding some new ones. That is it.
All right.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to
Sure.
quickly clarify. We do have a parking calculation with regard to that. We talked about 8 spaces is what you just mentioned, and I had said a maximum of 5, that would be 13. Not including the 2-car garage, there are 14 spaces.
Oh, yeah, no,
No,
I did not mean to.
I just wanted to clarify it for the board.
We have plenty of parking. And,
That's
and-
correct.
And it's,
As long as they're marked.
yeah, it needs to be delineated, but I just, there's reasons for us to ask for this parking.
Yep. Ms. Jana?
Yes, so I had a question. It was my understanding that just like the last fall, they are still leaving. They're just parking there, right?
That's correct.
And they're still leaving to do their operations like normal.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. In fact, the use of the actual property on the land is really de minimis.
So if I also,
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Chairman, if I may.
You have the
So
floor.
The applicant has asked for a number of waivers. And the reason, and I don't want to speak for the applicant, but the reason for the requests make sense to staff, because there in effect is, other than the parking, there is in effect no other change to this property. They're not adding any lighting, they're not adding any structures, they're not adding any signs, they're not adding
Change of use.
any of those things. So therefore, to require the applicant to spend a lot of money showing you drawings and everything else of existing conditions, that the request for these various waivers was made. And we don't have a problem with that request, but it is something the board needs to discuss and decide. And again, I want to emphasize, it is important to vote on the waiver request before you vote on the site plan.
And individually, or
You could vote.
Would
You
you
could
list?
grant all of the waivers requested with one vote if you chose to do so.
So for the record, what are the
What are they?
Yep, 20 of them.
Yeah.
There's 20 of them?
I'll give you.
Oh, okay.
There's
Is
landscape
everyone on
plan.
the board familiar with
No,
the?
I don't have that part.
I'll just, I'm not going to read you the details of them, but I will give you the titles of the sections that they're asking waivers from. They're pretty self-explanatory. They're requesting a waiver from the landscape plan.
Yep.
For the requirements of providing 8 copies of the plans, the proposed site plan, the existing conditions plan, the proposed improvements plan, the outdoor lighting plan, the
Okay.
third-party review, third-party peer reviews, which there's no requirements here for. Inspections and as-built plans. They're not building anything.
You're right.
Certificate of occupancy, there, again, there's no additional building or anything to occupy. Streets and access, they are using the existing driveway. Required improvements, there are none. Design standards, they are not making any changes to anything. They're not changing stormwater, not changing anything to do with public water or sewer. The site plan includes the conditions of 7.8. They're not asking for a waiver for that, but I want to point that out to you.
All right.
7.9 is non-municipal utilities. They don't have any. 7.10 is signs. They're not proposing any signs. Again, landscaping is 7.11 and 7.13 is sidewalks. Those are the waivers that they're requesting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for staff regarding the waivers?
I heard sidewalks. I'm kidding.
I like.
Yes, Mr. McWilliams.
Assuming there are no questions for staff, are we deliberating amongst ourselves at this point?
Well, I think we need a motion regarding the waiver and then a second, and then we could have a discussion.
Very good.
Would anyone care to make a motion to approve the waivers that have been requested?
A motion to approve all the waivers requested. Do I have to do
Motion
that?
by Ms. Jenna. Is there a second? Second by Mr. St. Clair. Why do I keep screwing that up? All right. Any discussion?
Yes, first I'd like to just let my fellow board members know that I do have concerns about this application. And I'm not going to outline those right now because as an alternate, I may or may not get a vote. So I'm not going to waste your time, but I would ask the chair if I may be granted a point of general privilege.
Actually, even though you don't have a vote, you are a member, an alternate member of the board, so therefore you may participate in the discussion.
I have a written statement here, if you would allow me to.
Sure.
3 minutes or so to read it. On May 3rd, 2022, the enterprise known as The Dive submitted an application to this planning board to establish operations at 427 Weirs Boulevard. The application was reviewed and accepted as complete by the board at that time. The chair then scheduled a public hearing for the following month's meeting, as this is standard procedure. On May 27th, 2022, the following post appeared on a social media site. Quote, and this was posted by The Dive. "We are devastated to not be open to see you this Memorial weekend. Thank you, Laconia, for hurting our business and employees." The author is obviously being sarcastic when they state, "Thank you, Laconia." I'm not sure who specifically they are referring to when they state this. Are they referring to the citizens of Laconia, the city council, the mayor? Perhaps they are intentionally being vague. but it is a matter of public record that this application was submitted to this board on 5/3/2022. No other city board, agency, or official had the authority to consider this application. So I think it's safe to assume that the author's frustration was being leveled at this planning board. Before I continue, let me just say that I certainly recognize this post as protected free speech in its entirety. Folks can say whatever they want on social media. It's their First Amendment right, and I respect that 100%. And I certainly understand the Dive's frustration over its inability to operate over the holiday weekend. I do, however, take umbrage with the insinuation, sarcastic or otherwise, that this board was somehow biased in its decision-making or that something illegitimate or nefarious is occurring in city government. I would like to stress that, based on my experience, that this board strives to treat each and every application fairly and consistently. In my time on this board, I have not observed any evidence of bias toward any individual or any particular type of business. I would also like to remind everyone that the members of this board are ordinary citizens, ordinary tax-paying citizens who willingly give of their time without compensation to manage development and land use in this city. As members of this board, we are tasked with weighing the interests of many different parties, parties whose interests are often at odds with one another, yet decisions have to be made. So more often than not, someone will be left unhappy with the outcome. More important to the point, this board, like any other government body or agency, has to operate within a certain framework. There are laws and regulations that have to be adhered to. That's simply the way it works. To insinuate that this board was responsible for the Dive's inability to operate is deceitful and misleading. Certainly, your inability to operate had more to do with your failure to submit your application in a timely manner. Finally, I find it especially reprehensible when you consider this applicant was or should have been familiar with the process. Your criticism is not only misguided, but premature. Tonight, this board considered public input from the public. Tonight, this board will deliberate the merits of this application. I know it is your hope that this board will act favorably on your application. Free speech is a constitutional right. That doesn't mean it's without repercussions. And I'd also like to add that I find it interesting, I'm not sure that's the right word, that the applicant seems to have plenty to say, but somehow cannot be present at this board meeting to clarify a number of issues. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you.
Very well said.
Anything else?
I have a concern with, I don't know, how many people does the Dive hold?
Chief?
They have a liquor license and a capacity of, they have a liquor license and a capacity of 80.
Because I can't understand how 4 or 5 people can make one trip across the street and take everything they need for the day and make one trip with all the garbage coming
Nobody
back.
said they were gonna take one trip.
I thought I heard that at some point.
I think that's what they're hopeful for.
One trip with a wheelbarrow, maybe. A lot of cases of booze and.
I just, there's gonna be, I mean, I go out on the boat with the wife and I make 5 trips to the dock and we just have a dog. So 80 people you have to bring provisions for. That's a lot of trips back and forth across the road.
Maybe so.
Just
I would like to see some low-level lighting just to show where the opening in the guardrail is. If something could be put up. Just turn it on at night, turn it off.
I think Attorney Wood may have a suggestion.
Mr. Chair, there actually is lighting on the telephone pole in that area on the property.
Okay. I saw the pole in the picture. Brett brought it up, so that if it is lit up, that's beneficial. But there's a lot of trips back and forth across that road.
Well, having grown up in the restaurant business, I would say that there'd be probably more trips in the morning, bringing provisions aboard than at night. You know. But either way, I think the conditions that are before the board would be adequate to protect the public's interest in this and still allow the dive to operate as is their right. So, yes.
The burden falls on the dive, because it's their employees crossing the street. If one of them gets hit by a car, that's a workman's comp claim.
Right.
That's right.
That's.
Okay, there's that too. All right, so any more questions for staff? Is that where we were at? Yes, I think we were. So now it would be what is the pleasure of the board?
I believe you have a motion for the
Yeah, I made a
waivers.
motion.
Oh, that's right. We do have a
Just the
motion on the
waivers.
waivers. So that was discussion on the waivers. So regarding the motion on the waivers, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I counting correctly? 7. Okay. 8. And then 1 in opposition. Yes, for the record, Counselor. Then the motion carries. And have a great season.
No.
That's just the way-
Oh, damn, that's not right. I may be getting ahead of myself. Okay, so the motion is to approve this site plan.
I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry. What's that? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve application PL 2020-0098 SP and 0099 CUP with staff recommendations.
Motion made by Ms. Jenna. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Dellavecchia. Any further discussion?
So I just want, so I would go back to which I thought was a good idea, the foliage or for the line of sight there. And you guys were good with that, if I recall.
We're okay trimming
Yeah.
the foliage around the road.
Okay. Any other comments or regarding the motion? All right. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. And opposed. And 7-1, 8-1. Math was not my strong suit. The motion carries. Now I say, go forth. and
Thank you,
prosper.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. We appreciate your time tonight.
I think we've reached the point when the chair must recuse. I have handouts for the board and the staff that way. And that way, all these is copies of the email communications that you would have all received. And I brought some extra copies for the public, shall we say.
But it is getting full, so I think
I'm going to yield the gavel to the Secretary Mike Dellavecchia.
Before you begin, Mike, do you want to just take a 5-minute recess for bathroom break or whatever? anybody-
Yeah, it's a good idea. All those in favor, say aye.
We need a motion.
You need a motion.
You need a motion to take a
I make a motion that
5-minute
we take a
recess.
5-minute break.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Only 2 stalls.
Take a break.
Get out of my
Well, I'm
way.
younger, I can run it.
Well, I-
Just decided I'm transgender.
I see.
Rule
I
is-
see.
He's got a pool in front of him.
Back. We'll precede the meeting at 8:30.
Mr. Chair, I would note that with the recusal of Mr. Brunette, that you can use the elevator. Gentlemen, we're in meeting, please.
I'm up here for the bike.
I think we reconvened.
Yeah, it's 8:30. And since there's a recusal, Scott will be a voting member for this matter. It's the applicant here.
Yes.
Would you come up, sir? Identify yourself, please.
Good evening. My name is Ron DeCola, representing Pogus Properties. We're here before you tonight just to ask for the approval of the amended site plan. As you all know, this is a situation that we were put in through no fault of our own, and we've done everything that we were asked to do with respect to the amendment that was needed on the site plan. The issues with Mr. Brunette, we're not trying to marginalize those at all. We have reached out to him a few times, and we continue to stand here before you and tell you that we will work with him. But we do feel that the two issues are mutually exclusive, and that vis-a-vis the approval of the amended site plan should not be held hostage to Mr. Brunette's concerns. That's the end.
Very good, Ron. Is there any questions from board members for Ron?
I have a question.
Certainly.
If I may, thank you. When you said that you're going to reach out to him,
We have reached out to him.
you have reached out to him.
Yes, our site people, yes.
And you've reached out to him to go over the concerns he had at the last meeting?
That's correct.
Specifically?
That's correct.
Okay, and has there been any conclusion to that at all? or-
Not yet. I mean, we're willing to work, but if obviously this board's in receipt of those two, I would call them diatribes by Mr. Brunette. It's certainly not a mindset of working with us or working with the city for that matter.
Mr. Jane?
First of all, I resent the characterization of diatribe, but seems to me that as I understand it, some of this relates to your incursion into his setback. Is that correct?
Because they have been granted under performance zoning, you have given the relief from the setback, but yes, the steel ribbon is in what would normally be the setback. Yes.
I just, I think I want to echo what Mr. St. Clair was suggesting, and that is, you may well get your vote tonight, but I find your approach to this to be difficult for me personally.
Well, I just ask you to compare my emails versus Mr. Brunette's. It's
His
pretty
may-
self-evident
Are certainly lengthier, but I don't consider
and
them
a lot less,
diatribe.
mine were a lot less bellicose too, but go ahead.
Anybody else? Any questions for Ron DeCola?
I have a question. I'm assuming you guys hired a firm to do pre-insertion inspection of foundation and all that and post inspection, and both of those are done?
During, and there'll be a post inspection, yeah.
You have not conducted a post?
I don't know, I know there's a current one there. I don't know if you categorize it as a post inspection. I can find out, but I know there is one in effect right now. In existence, I should say.
Did they identify issues?
No.
Anybody else? Any questions from Ron? Scott, Brett, nobody?
I just, and I apologize for this, because I missed it. Can you just tell me who you represent?
Pogus Properties, the owner.
You represent the owner.
Yes.
I'm just curious, who reviews these inspections?
I didn't hear your question.
Who reviews the inspections?
Who reviews them? We have an engineering firm that did it. Are you talking some kind of like peer review subsequent to that or addition to that? Is that what you're asking me?
Well, an inspection was done.
Yes,
And
we're happy to provide that to the city too. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, was it submitted to somebody or?
No, as far as I know, it was not submitted to anybody, but we have it.
I guess I got one more question if I could. Go ahead, Charlie.
Sure.
So I guess I'll get right to these issues or items or that the butter wanted for mitigation. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody on these, but one was to wash down the house, like a power wash, I guess, when the construction was all done. Do you have any issues with that?
Again, we can,
Just yes or no?
well, I don't want to answer that at this point in time.
Okay.
We will work with him on every one of those line items. That's all I can tell you.
All right. And on the landscaping up there,
Right.
any issues with that?
No, we'll do what's required of us according to the site plan.
What are the site plan?
Yes. And I think some of that dovetails into Mr. Burnett's concerns. So if we have to do that, then we'll do it.
And who would say that they would have to do that? Is that something they would volunteer to work out with?
They have a landscaping plan that was presented and approved by this board. We will make sure that what's installed for landscaping agrees with that landscaping plan.
Okay, because upon my walking around looking at the area, I noticed that ditch that's there that runs along where the trees are. And there's a ditch or really, it's like about like this deep. And up against the abutter's property, it's just like, it just drops. It's a drop. I have pictures of that. And I can see that being a problem with erosion or a hard rain with that all going down. So I guess that's my question. Is that one of the things that will be filled back in and made to look like?
It's an active construction site at this
I
point in
understand
time.
that.
This is not when we have landscaping installed.
I understand that. I
Okay.
understand that. These are just questions I'm asking. And then the other one, and again, for clarification, I've never had to deal with this before. On the foundation and the driveway, you have pictures or they did a look, I guess, some documentation of what the foundation looked like all around the side of the house?
And the
side-
interior.
Sir?
And the interior.
Okay, and also of the driveway?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, are there members of the public? Did they get to speak with this? Yep. Are there any members? Ron, Rob?
I do not see anybody that has raised their hand to speak online for the application.
I recognize Peter in the back. Would like to come up.
Was the chair going to open a public hearing?
He's doing
Yes.
it now.
Okay.
He just did it.
I'll open the public hearing at 8:39. Ron, if you'd give
Would
up
you
the
like me to sit
podium for him.
In case you don't know me, Peter Burnett, 15 Park Street. The original memorandum that I addressed to the board that listed the mitigating conditions continues to be my request. What is properly before you, in my opinion, tonight is a revisitation for the third time of the conditional use permit, where the trust is asking that you impose those mitigation suggestions as conditions of the revisited CUP. And I think it speaks for itself. I don't know if any of you came out and did a site visit or anything like that. I did have a brief discussion with Mike Locken. I've never met this gentleman before. My contact with Pogus Properties has always been Mike. He's a straight shooter. We discussed the matter. The discussion went like this. So what do you want, Peter? I said, have you seen the memo with the list of mitigations? Yep, I said, that's what I want. No, seriously, what do you want, Peter? So that was the negotiation. At this point in time, I'm just asking you to
to do the right thing. It was the unfortunate error of the developer to submit an incomplete plan. It was the unfortunate error, the planning department of not catching that. And when the error was brought to their attention, failing to take appropriate corrective action at that time. Had they done so, I wouldn't be standing here with you after a year of litigation asking you to do the right thing. So I think mitigation is the right thing, and that's all I really have for you tonight. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Please, Scott.
Thank
Mr. Brunette, you are aware that the site plan does include a landscaping plan as well as a lighting plan. So would you agree that those two issues could be removed from your list?
What I'm asking is that the landscaping be done in the areas where there is indisputably an encroachment in the setback, that it be done, I said, under the direction of the abutter, but certainly in conjunction with the contractors is fine. I'll give you an example. So there's a parking area that used to be, well, it's approximately the same location as the northern parking lot for the CJ Avery's, which used to be my family's restaurant many years ago, the Schooner. Some of the older members may remember that. It had a rip-wrap wall with rocks the size of refrigerators. And apparently the architect, Mr. Stewart, an old friend of mine, thought it was unsightly. So they removed all those big rocks and they put in a nice retaining wall of concrete blocks. In the excavation to remove those large rocks, they excavated pretty close to the property line within the setback, but there's no actual structure, I don't think, within the setback. But they didn't build the retaining wall, the block retaining wall at a sufficient height to restore the grade, because now it's steep and it comes down. They have put on their plan that they intend to build a privacy fence along there. I think they said 8 feet tall. Is that what it was? I don't remember. That's right, because you don't know anything about this application. So what I'm proposing to do is to maintain, to have that area landscaped. There's a lot of junk trees and stuff in there. Save a couple of good trees, have the area leveled, and I will maintain it right up to the fence. And that way it's the best of both worlds. They don't have to worry about trimming anything. My property line actually extends out quite a ways further than I knew originally, because when they vibrated the steel in, apparently the boundary pin vibrated itself into the ground, which Peter Howard discovered. So now we know where the line is. The encroachment is relatively minor, and all I'm asking them to do is backfill with good loam. And the same thing along the south line, which is where my property abuts the parking garage. There is currently a trench there that they intend to backfill. And I had spoken with Tim from Bonnet, Page and Stone and said I would hope that they would backfill it with loam. And I'll give them credit. They sent a crew in with a welder. And the reason the trench is there so the masons could put the facing on the wall, but they also sent a welder in. They cut the steel off about 3 feet below ground level. So consequently, I'm not going anywhere near it. But that's good news for the perennials and the trees.
Does the landscape plan as submitted satisfy what it is you're currently asking for? I mean, you know, it's not done yet, so, but I mean, as submitted, does it satisfy your request?
No.
Why?
Because I'm asking that the landscaping be done under the direction of the abutter.
That's a bit unusual, Peter.
Well, it may be unusual, but if you had come to see the property,
I
you see
have.
what we're talking about.
Oh, I have.
All right, so they've got to backfill, and they've got to raise the retaining wall if they're going to properly backfill that area. And they can't install an 8-foot privacy fence unless they've put some footings in. And those footings are going to be within the setback. Just saying,
They can drill the top of that wall. That's probably what they'll do.
that would be fine with me.
It's typically what I've seen before. They core bore into the top of those
Right.
ready blocks and put the fence there.
You see, the other issue that I was hopeful the board would pick up on is this. It is my contention that you're not just approving an amended site plan, but you're actually being asked to amend the conditional use permit that was granted in June of last year. That means that you would take into consideration the efforts that this board could take to mitigate the error of the planning director that caused the harm to my driveway and my foundation and my yard. And I'm here to tell you that my intent is to beautify that area and to remove an unsightly steel fence. There's no sense in having a no man's land between their fence and my fence. And I frankly don't understand the developers' objections to it. It's a very minor expense. But any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Very good, Peter. Thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak for or against this application?
There's nobody on Zoom that has raised their hand to indicate that they wish to speak at this time.
Rob, I guess we get a staff report next. Staff report. We'll close the public hearing at 8:48. And ask for a staff report,
So
please.
the request from the applicant is to amend their application to show the where the steel ribbon was placed, and also to reaffirm their use of performance zoning for the entire site plan, which has been approved twice before. The two conditions are that all of the previous conditions of the planning board remain in effect, so none of them are go away or get overridden. And the second one is the setbacks will allow to be reduced in accordance with performance zoning as depicted on the plan. And obviously, we recommend approval.
Very good. Any discussion amongst the board?
Of course.
Yes, Mr. St. Clair.
Thank you very much. The owner of the property up there, Scott, has done a tremendous job developing Lakeport Square, I would submit. And to have this unhappiness up there between one property owner who's right up against that property, for what I consider to be, and I maybe am off base on this, but we're not looking, I don't think that this mitigation that the property owner or the abutter is asking, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe a lot less than that. And maybe it's going to be covered, like Dean said, in the, in the plan that's already there for the mitigation of the fixing the property back up, the land back up. But I'm very uncomfortable that somebody from Scott Everett's property has not been able to come up and say, yes, we agree, or we're going to do this when this is done. Power washing. I haven't heard anybody say, we're definitely going to do that. We're going to talk about it. But I would rather have them say, we're going to do that. And maybe we're not supposed to be talking about this now, but because this application has been open again, or be for an amendment, I think we have the right to be talking about this like any other conditions that we talk about when we have a site plan. We do mitigate stuff and we say, you know what, you gotta have the bushes here, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. We do it all the time. So the fact that this has been opened up again with an amended site plan, I guess it's called, I don't think we're out of order to bring up these, to bring up the discussion that the abutter has asked us to talk about. I don't think we're out of line to do that. And so I would like to, if the business, if Scott's business can't say, yes, we're gonna power wash this place, and yes, we feel that there's some things we can do with the driveway, because I did go up today and walked around and took pictures, and I had the property owner show me some stuff that he was concerned about. So I've got a pretty good idea, and I would tend to agree with him on them. I'm just not happy that they haven't worked this out. I think it's up to the business people, quite frankly, and I can't believe again that Scott hasn't jumped all over this to get this worked out without a butter. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here. And that property owner, that abutter, has a whole new landscape up there. And I can understand why that property owner is sensitive to some of the stuff that he's dealing with. So I would hope that this board can, one way or the other, answer some of, or try to make some of that stuff happen for the abutter, if we can add that. I'm not disagreeing with staff, but I think we can maybe just take a step forward or one step further to maybe add some of these conditions if possible. If that can be done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Shaney.
Present company accepted. After 25 years in law enforcement, I have a natural inclination not to be fond of attorneys. So that puts Mr. Burnett at a disadvantage to begin with. That said, I guess I agree largely with Charlie, Mr. St. Clair. It just seems to me we could ask these people to give us an answer one way or the other to the items that Mr. Burnett has asked about. I don't want any long, complicated thing. I thought the month that we gave him was going to solve this problem, and I'm very disappointed to be here tonight with the answers we got from the property owner's representative.
I agree.
And so I just, I'm inclined to ask that we put this off another month and see if these two can't work this out.
Mr. Chairman, if you were to do that, I would suggest that you table this with the direction that the applicant respond in writing in advance to those requests for mitigation.
That's why I accepted you from my, that was exactly what I was going to say.
Good.
Should we make it a motion?
I do make it a motion and with the
Would you like
inclusion
some
of
help?
the, yes,
That would be a motion to table this until the board's next regular meeting with the direction to the applicant that it is to respond to Mr. Brunett's request for mitigation in writing at least 1 week, 2 weeks? 2 weeks before the next meeting.
But that's A, B, C, D, E, whatever.
6 items.
6 items. Yes,
I second that.
thank you very much.
of course. I sat here all night. I got to earn my money.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the
I have
motion?
one question on that. So we should also push that we need the post insertion inspection completed by their structural engineer.
Wait.
So a further requirement to the tabling that the applicant submit the pre and post inspection reports related to the foundation and the driveway at least 2 weeks before the next
Well,
meeting.
the post inspection wouldn't be until the job is completed.
But there are ongoing inspections was whatever inspections they have.
Very good.
I believe as part of when they drove that sheet pile, they set seismographs, they did an inspection, I'm assuming, of driveway, foundation, house, internal, external. Typically, when I've been, they videotape, take pictures, all that stuff. And then they do it after that stuff was put in the ground.
And we would like to see that 10 days before the next meeting. or 2 weeks before the next.
Or that we want their findings. Did they
Yeah.
find any damage?
Thank you.
What is documented?
Well thought.
I have a question.
Okay.
When it pertains to the foundation and the driveway, when a project is done like that, wouldn't it, if there is damage and they can prove there's damage, wouldn't that go through the insurance company thereafter? Or why would
Yeah,
that be our,
The city of Laconia has no control over that. That's between the abutter and the constructor.
right, that's what I'm, so we have the authority though.
But
to
we would like to see if there's truly damage. It's not a bad idea.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just have a comment. I agree, it's unfortunate there's this discord between the abutter and this developer on this project because, you know, again, it is a fantastic project. But I would just like to contrast what's going on here with this application and this developer with the application we had a while back, the mountains to whatever, remember the condos at the Weirs on the Cumberland.
Lookout Laconia?
Yeah, I guess that's
Dean?
Lookout Laconia, right?
Lookout, yeah.
Lookout Laconia. And there were issues raised by abutters. And the developer went out and talked to those abutters and came to an agreement with them. And the following meeting, everything was settled. Everybody was happy. And not only that, I think we were all impressed with how that developer worked through the issues and in a friendly manner, and everybody walked away happy.
And done in from one meeting to the next.
Exactly. So I just want to bring that up.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board before we vote? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion? Against? Looks like it's 8-1. Get used to it. So I'll ask Mr. Cola.
We'll send a letter to follow up.
Please, try harder. And probably moving right along. Peter, you come back.
Doing such a great job, Mike. Keep going, man.
Thank you for being here, Laura.
Next meeting, July 5th.
No, I think it was just, did I see, I think it was the 12th. I think they should go to I think the 12th. I remember correctly. I think it's the 12th.
No, 12.
12th.
May I approach?
July 12th.
12.
Yeah.
New business.
Does anyone have any new business?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
No one knows what the future is going to hold when it comes to the ongoing effects of the pandemic. However, at this point in time, I would like to raise the question of continuing the use of Zoom during meetings. As you know, prior to the pandemic, with rare exceptions of maybe the use of a telephone, everyone who presented to the board and every abutter who wanted to comment to the board did so in person. And while there is certainly advantages to using Zoom, it also leads to a little bit of laziness sometimes on the part of folks in that, there's no effort being made because they get to stay home and watch the Celtics or whoever's playing tonight, and this meeting is going on. The only other body in the city that is still using Zoom for every meeting is the city council. And every other board in the city that was using Zoom on a regular basis, just like this board is, has ceased using it. So I use that as a data point. And I don't think we need to make that decision tonight unless you want to make that decision tonight, but something to consider from a policy of the board, or whether you want to continue to use Zoom or not. And obviously, if in the course of the future, if there is a need to return to Zoom, we certainly would do that. But anyway, I leave
You'd
that
like
to
to
you.
put it on hold for now instead of continue.
That is, I think, what
Do we need to
I
make a
asked you
motion?
to consider.
Vote
doing,
on
yes.
that? or-
I have a question on that. I think when we were fully into, or mostly
right
into, wasn't that a directive from the governor or something? And then
Well,
he lifted that, correct?
Indirectly. He allowed you to do meetings electronically without having a quorum present.
Right.
And certainly that was the encouragement from all health officials. And we were, 100% obviously on board with that.
And has he
And
rescinded
then,
that?
and then at a point in time, that gets rescinded. And so now you're under normal. I mean, there was always the ability for any board to use electronic means as long as you had a physical quorum.
Mhm.
And in this board's case, that would be at least 5 people here who can vote on a particular item. So that's where we're at now. Occasionally in the past few months, we've had a board member or two use Zoom because they're out of the city. And that certainly is very convenient, although you go back 2 years, if for some reason they needed to be out of the city, they
That's
were
what the
out of the
alternates are
city,
for.
and I'm not making a judgment call on that, or, saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just, it's different. I'm not saying it's good or bad. And the same is true of the butters, and the same is true of applicants. I believe that there is a substantial advantage for you as a board member, certainly me as a staff member, to hear and see the people who are making comments, because there's a lot to be said for body language and that kind of thing. So, which gets lost in translation many times when you're in the digital world.
Mr. Cheney? Couldn't agree with the last of that more. The only thing I would ask is that we consider some sort of language that allows staff to reinstate Zoom with a
If
month's
needed.
notice or
If
something
needed.
like that.
Sure.
Because we might end up with, some new COVID-19 XYZ and need to move quickly to go back to Zoom.
So it could be something like, at the time the minutes come out for the meeting, it will be established whether Zoom will be available or not. Or is that too short?
Certainly when the agenda is
For the
posted, which
agenda.
is usually about 10 days before the meeting, we will know whether we need to do Zoom for an official purpose. I mean, we've had some last minute requests and we've accommodated that, and we could certainly continue to accommodate that. But I just, my personal feeling, and it's just my personal feeling, is that we have reached the point in the stage of the world that this crutch that we've been using maybe is not necessary anymore.
And besides Rob's time, is there a cost to the city to be?
There is.
Yes.
For-
yeah,
for
we have
every
to-
meeting?
Yeah, we have to pay for Zoom, so it's, if we stop doing it here, is there going to be a decrease? No, because we're still paying the flat fee to be, a commercial user of Zoom. But we had more logins previously, so we have cut back because, again, it's this board and the city council, the only ones using it. And obviously you don't meet at the same time, but I mean, there are other reasons. I mean, we use Zoom for other reasons during the course of the business week that are not related to meetings.
But the number of people that use it doesn't affect the subscription fee, does it? Doesn't the city pay a fixed subscription fee every month?
Correct.
So that they're going to continue to pay that
Yeah, the
so that
difference
you
has
may
been-
use it for other things, even if this
Right, the
board
difference has
doesn't.
been the number of logins that we had. We had 3, I think, at one time, and we cut back to 2, and now we have 1, so the city can do 1 Zoom meeting at a time. That's what it boils down to.
I think Charlie was next.
Yeah, I obviously respectfully disagree a little bit here. I think that with our lack of participation over the years, whatever reason, I don't know that I call them lazy. I think sometimes people forget. I think with the price of gasoline today, anything we can do to mitigate, have people having to drive anywhere is a good thing. Some people may not be healthy enough to come here and want to take part in it. I think that's a good thing. And I think that the fact that the city council still does it speaks volumes. If the city council was to stop doing it, and that would be up to the city council, then maybe there'd be an argument to say, you know what, the city council isn't doing it anymore. I guess we shouldn't be either. I also think that I think it's good that board members, if they are out of state, obviously I'm one of those people for my job, that they can take part in the meeting, even if they're just watching it, and listening. That's a good thing. I don't think there's any harm in that at all. And I don't know about the price here, but again, I think that's expensive, that there's a subscription fee. So us canceling it here is not gonna save the city tons of money. I don't know that it's a bad thing at all. And I get it, and I agree with Bruce on that, agreeing with Dean about body language and all that stuff. But to take away the public's chance to take part in these, whether it's a butters or whoever, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think we should be doing it.
Anybody else want to be heard on this? This is a new business item, so it's gonna be on as old business next time anyway. I think there's no.
Shay, I do have a question. I do have a question.
Sure.
On the matter of body language, why don't we require that they speak on video?
Sometimes.
Put them on the screen.
Sometimes they are on the screen.
You, Rob, you can put them up.
Yeah,
We can
usually
see
they
them,
are on the
right?
screen. I don't- Right in the corner.
Yes, I can put them up. I think the reason why we don't is there were some security concerns of people doing the Zoom bombing before, of the background images and things being displayed when you promote them to a panelist, and that is why we don't.
Well, that's why
But the
you screen them and put them in a waiting room of some sort, right?
No, we don't have that. We don't have that option. Well,
you could.
If IT allowed certain things, we could change the way things are done, but everybody goes in, it's public. There's no password. It's not password protected. The only control we have is when I allow them to speak or I promote them to a panelist or I demote them. That is our only control.
We don't want to. So the answer is, yeah, we can. I don't think, you probably don't know, being a new member, but I'm sure that the rest of the members know that I think we should continue with Zoom. I think it's none of our business to determine whether people are being lazy or what their motivations are. Anything that we can do to increase public access to government is consistent with the statutes. It's consistent with the ordinance, and it's consistent with the very reason for which we meet publicly. There are people that, elderly folks that, like me, have cataracts, that shouldn't be driving at night, don't like driving at night. There are people that are disabled. They should not have to haul their broken bodies up the stairs or up the elevator to come in here and sit uncomfortably for hours just to save 5 minutes worth of comments. But that being said, I guess it will be on the agenda under old business next time. And does that meet everybody's approval generally? Okay. There is an item. Are you done with new business? There's an item that should have been on old business that was we didn't get to last week. And I'd ask that it be put back on, and I guess at this point, once again, maybe we could do it at the next meeting, and that is to reevaluate the performance zoning ordinance in light of recent developments in the city. We have succeeded in attracting well-heeled developers to the city, but I question whether we have adequate staff to actually properly approve a performance zoning application. It was a question that was raised initially when it first was proposed to the Master Plan Steering Committee. And assurances were made that, yes, we have plenty of staff, but, you know, errors can be made that can create unnecessary hardship and then liabilities. And if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Maybe if for no other reason than for us to recommend to the city council that they hire more staff in the planning department. But I think it bears looking into. And I would ask that it be put on under old business again next month. Thank you, Scott. And if there's no objection to that, liaison reports.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is old
Oh,
business.
this is the planning department.
I'm still on old business, but it's only like a half hour old. 8 people spoke in favor of the dive. 3 of them were not from Laconia. Do we allow non-residents to speak?
Yes. It's a public hearing.
Because I remember Bill Cantaro, you can't talk.
Well, I wouldn't comment on a previous chair's ability to,
What's wrong with you?
don't go there. No, it's a public hearing. Anybody, that's why we ask them to identify themselves by name and address. And we can take into consideration, there are lots of people that have an interest in what we do that don't live here. There's a lot of, like billionaires in Dallas, Texas. You know what I mean? Okay. Planning Department report.
I have no report for you.
Rob? Did I miss the annual dinner or is that coming up?
So
Free food.
So I did impose there's a cutoff for ordering tickets, which was yesterday, and I asked for a deadline of everybody to submit to me who wanted to go by June 5th, so I could order tickets, and nobody responded to my email, so I have not ordered any extra tickets, and now the cutoff for ordering tickets has been closed.
Free food?
Yes, you lost the opportunity for free food.
Well, I think this board has the power to order you to bring us one hell of a big doggy bag.
I'll work that out.
Okay.
How did we miss free food?
The annual, this is the Lakes Region Planning Commission. Okay. Conservation, Stacy's not with us this evening. City Council. Nothing.
Not at the moment.
And the Historic District Commission, we never hear from them.
No, that's not true. We're still waiting on the city council to act on the changes proposed to the, what's it called, Dean?
The overlay.
Overlay district.
The overlay district, yeah, on that. So there was no meeting this month past. The next meeting is scheduled for the end of June, but we're still waiting on the city council to act on that.
The chair of the Heritage Commissions called me last month in my role as an amateur archaeologist of all things about a demo permit on Sheridan Street. And I referred her to James Garvin, who is an architectural historian that she could contact through the cultural, you know, what is it, the Division of Cultural and something affairs, resources.
DHR.
Did you, Historic and Cultural Resources, was there any follow-up to that or?
Not for a property on Sheridan Street. Is it the property on Gold Street?
Oh, it has a Gold Street address, but it's at the start of Sheridan. Yeah, I know. It's a blue building. No?
Green now. Greenish.
So
I'm colorblind, so.
I don't know either. I could be too. for all I know.
the Heritage Commission has approved the demo permit for that building.
Okay.
So whether HDR will go out and take a look at stuff, I don't know.
All right, I doubt it, but thank you. All right, so I think we've gone through all the liaison reports.
Could I just interrupt that? And this just crossed my mind.
That's all right.
I,
We have to catch them when they come through.
the older you get,
What did you say?
the older you get.
What'd you say?
Yeah. I'd like to hear from Dean in the near future about the state school property and his, because I think the planning department and the planning board is going to have some issues with what goes on up there coming up, and we
With the last line
discussed
of
it.
defense.
Yeah, pretty much. I sort of spoke up at the Lakeshore Redevelopment Planning Commission meeting the other day. And in fairness, I admitted I hadn't talked to Dean in advance, so I wasn't sure I knew what I was talking about. But I suggested that as soon as the ink is dry on the sale of that property, they suddenly have to come here with their plans. And I hope we can be involved sooner rather than later. I think we are involved. I think Dean certainly has had meetings with some of these folks. And I understand he can't violate confidences that he has, but I think he could give us a report on, you know, the sorts of things that are being looked at and what we're hoping is gonna.
I think it was last year, I had a long conversation with Commissioner Bald, George Bald, who was the chair of the commission. My understanding is, however, that the governor has decided not to create an authority similar to Pease and
that's true,
and has authorized the property to be transferred to a real estate agent, basically.
But at the same time, the legislature approved monies for that commission to continue to operate.
Yeah, I know.
Going forward. So I think they're collecting historical information and hazardous material information, other things like that, that I'd like to hear about.
Okay. Well,
is that unreasonable, Dean?
No problem.
So we'll get a report in the future on that.
Thank you.
Anything else regarding planning departments or liaison reports? If not, I see 15.1 is entitled Reconsideration of Sidewalk Waiver 244 Province Street. I assume that's why you're here. In order for us to reconsider a vote, we need somebody who voted in the majority to make a motion to reconsider, if I'm not mistaken, under Robert's rules.
Wasn't it unanimous?
No, it was not. It was 7-2.
So somebody who voted in the majority has to make a motion to reconsider, and that has to be duly seconded, and then it has to pass.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, a motion by Councillor Cheney. Is there a second?
The point of discussion, I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, under discussion.
Sure. Maybe we'll hear from the maker first and then.
Well, because of the sequence that the planning board voted on this agenda item, you voted to approve the site plan. And then you voted afterwards to not approve the waiver request, which is opposite of what needs to occur, because obviously if you had voted to not approve the waiver, then you would have voted to either table the application or you would have voted to approve the application, but with the requirement that the sidewalk be there. You've done none of those things.
We were out of order.
Yes, so that this is the issue.
Why is it?
Whether that constitutes a reconsideration vote by the planning board or whether This is an administrative appeal to you to straighten out the mess that we have before us. However you want to look at it, that's the issue. You have an approved site plan that does not have a sidewalk on it, but you have also not granted a sidewalk waiver.
Would you explain to us by what basis you say they have to be done in that order? Some ordinance or statute?
No, sir.
Okay.
Because you approved the site plan and they did not include a sidewalk in their site plan, and you approved that site plan. That's the site plan of record.
Yeah, that's not before us tonight. Tonight's for reconsideration of the waiver. And I don't think the order in which those two actions were taken by the board is legally relevant. But perhaps Attorney Brouillard could weigh in on that.
Well, I think what the planning director's trying to say, at least what I understood him to say, is that if you approve the plan, if you would have looked at the plan, you would have seen that there's no sidewalk. So you voted on a plan with no sidewalk. Because I think John tried to explain the reason why we couldn't put a sidewalk there. I've subsequently done a lot of research on this and spoken to DPW director and the planning director. And we can't remember a time where I've ever proposed a sidewalk waiver. This is the first one. Always built sidewalks. In fact, this property that you approved has an internal sidewalk system and a sidewalk system from the project down to the dog park that people will in fact use. The sidewalk that you denied the waiver for is 130 feet long, 130 feet. And it's at the entrance on Province Street. And the closest sidewalk is almost a mile away. It's also, I learned from DPW, outside the urban compact. So the sidewalk would not be maintained. It would just be there. It wouldn't be used. I don't know where anyone's going to come from to walk on that 130 feet of sidewalk. I've talked to DPW, I've talked to the director, and I've talked to Dean. And the developer has no problem putting money in escrow with DPW in the city to build sidewalk somewhere where the DPW wants to build it within the urban compact, somewhere near the project, so that you do in fact get a sidewalk that somebody can use, because I think that's what we all want. We want a sidewalk somebody can use. So I think what Dean's trying to say is we've got a plan that we have very carefully orchestrated, and John Roque is here and he can speak to you about the drainage from a certain area goes through that, and there can't be a sidewalk there because there's a drainage ditch there. And maybe that would be a good point for John to speak to on this, and then I'll pick it back up again.
John, are you at Old Orchard Beach?
That's the picture, but I'm not there. No, unfortunately.
Gonna say,
And actually along
in Laconia.
Yeah, no, along the lines of what was just discussed about the Zoom option. I actually needed it really bad tonight because I'm at home with 3 sick kids and I wasn't able to actually physically be there. So it was a thing that happened as of today, really, that I needed to attend the meeting by Zoom. So there's all kinds of different issues that come up with needing to come to Zoom, needing to use Zoom or not use Zoom. So just for consideration. But Rob, can you let me screen share? Okay, is everybody seeing the plan now?
Yep.
Okay, so this lower detention pond at the entrance onto Province Street, basically it's collecting drainage from basically starting right from these catch basins. So this portion of the road all the way down to the entrance, it's about 500 feet of the entrance comes down to this detention pond right on Province Street. And the way that we have catch basins for the ditch, we're collecting the road, we're collecting everything, putting it into a detention pond right here. The outlet of this outlets into what is going to be an improved ditch on Province Street and going down to an existing drain pipe that crosses the road. There's hardly any room at all here on this road. So when you go from the edge of road, and you see that the ditch is right there. If you try to physically construct a sidewalk on that area, the drainage you can't actually do the drainage, and there's nowhere to put the drainage for this pond. So you can't actually do the project if you require a sidewalk here, because there's no other place to put the drainage to get it off the property. So that was the dilemma. Like we were when you guys, it was after the public session, and we couldn't bring this issue up to you that night because the public session had been closed. And I understand 100% the way you guys were looking at it. I think the way you guys were looking at it is that there's no big deal. I mean, it's only 130 feet. Let's make them put it in. But in this situation, it physically prevents the project from being able to be constructed.
All right.
And that being said, I do want you to know, we're willing to build 130 feet of sidewalk, but we just like to put it somewhere where it's going to be used. And then I've discussed this with Dean and DPW, and they would like us to collaborate on coming up with a price that we would pay to the DPW to put into a fund so that they could use that money together with other money that are in the budget, and perhaps other monies that other developers put in to actually build a sidewalk somewhere in the general area that can be helpful to people. So I applaud and understand the reasoning and all the discussion from the prior meeting about sidewalk waivers. But I do want you to know, just like the ZBA, just like a variance, sometimes you really do need a sidewalk waiver. And so I think it's important to have some kind of methodology to deal with it. We are voluntarily agreeing to come up with a price and to pay that price to the city and the DPW to build that 130 feet of sidewalk. Now, just remember, we're building hundreds of feet of sidewalk. We're building an internal sidewalk system, and we're building a public sidewalk on the access road down to the dog park, which will be used. So we're really not trying to get out of building sidewalk, which a lot of these waiver requests are doing. And I want you to know, we in very good faith, because I've asked staff and I've asked John, and nobody remembers a project affiliated with me that's ever asked for a sidewalk waiver except for this 130 feet. So sometimes when you need it, you got to really ask for it, and you really got to get it. And so that's why we're here tonight, to request reconsideration of the sidewalk waiver. And we would like the sidewalk waiver to be granted with the condition that planning staff and DPW and the developer jointly work to develop a value for that sidewalk, and that amount of money be paid to a fund to the city of Laconia and the DPW for sidewalk construction someplace in proximity to this, to allow for, with the other funds that may be available, to build a sidewalk somewhere where the public could actually use it, rather than outside the urban compact, where a brand new sidewalk is just going to go to seed because nobody's going to use it. It's not going to get plowed. And it's actually a threat to this project, which I think it goes without saying that you folks really know that we need 90 new apartments. And that, you know, it would be a shame to hold it up for 130 feet of sidewalk when you're going to get your 130 feet of sidewalk just someplace else. I did intimate last time that a very prominent statewide developer who has done projects in Laconia has entered into a sale and purchase agreement to purchase this and build it. And he's going to have them done in 3 years. Another thing that I'm requesting of the board tonight is the completion date that the board specified in the notice of action was May 7th, 2024. Mr. Agnos has told me that projects of this size take 3 years to build. So we would like the completion date extended to 2025. I've consulted with Dean on this and Laura, and I've consulted with Laura, and there's no, there is a limit on a subdivision site plan or a subdivision plan of the 2-year completion, but on a site plan, it can be longer. There's no hard and fast 2-year rule. And Laura sent Dean an email and he's going to speak to that. But we'd sort of all like to work together here to make these apartments, bring them to fruition and bring them to people so that people can move here and other families have a place to live. And it's going to be really nice in there. Nobody's going to see it. It's not going to be an eyesore. It's going to go out to the dog park, and it's going to be a real credit to the city. So in summation, I really would like to have the completion date on the NOA for the approval extended to 2025, May 7, 2025, instead of 24, and would really appreciate you reconsidering the sidewalk waiver, subject to those words, which I have repeated a couple of times about putting the money into escrow.
Did you discuss with Laura whether it was appropriate for us to make that other change within the context of a motion to reconsider a waiver?
Well, you'd probably not. You probably need to request that that be brought back for motion for reconsideration. But that's the only thing we're requesting as far as any change to that one. You'd have to go through the same process with that.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you.
Dean, is there any way to earmark that money to make sure that Public Works uses it for sidewalks? And can we give them a completion date?
I thought we've discussed this a million times, and there isn't really a fund, and there needs to be a priority list first that money would go to, and it just doesn't exist, and DPW doesn't have the personnel to do that.
Well,
they told me that they could because they're the ones that came up with this. So
yeah.
The difference here is that you've potentially, if the board agrees, you potentially have 3 parties that want to get this done and get it done within a reasonable amount of time. The only other occasion that this mechanism has been used was for the apartments right out back here across the river. And the condition on it was that they would be used for a sidewalk in the vicinity of the apartments, sidewalk improvements, or no, sidewalk addition, because there's already sidewalk. DPW has not added any sidewalks in the vicinity for 7 years now. So the money sits there. So the difference, but the difference here is you've got people that want to use it and want to make it happen. So, you know, we can make it happen, but I mean, it's not going to be tomorrow, but we can make it happen.
7 years or so.
So, and for any of you that have served on the
Capital improvement.
yes, capital improvements plan, you'll know that the planning director, that the director of public works basically says we don't even have enough money to maintain the streets that we have. That was been his standard, but it occurs to me that we could recommend to the council that there is always a line item in the public works budget for sidewalks, and that there be an understanding that it be spent, or it can't be transferred to some other use. Then when we have situations like this, where there's a worthy application for a waiver, that the money could be put into that same fund with the understanding that it would be used within the same fiscal year for a sidewalk. And then he can't say he doesn't have the money because, well, it's been appropriated. Doesn't have to be a lot, but I mean, I think he only gets roughly 2 million a year for street repairs. And then everything else is bid out as separate jobs. 2 million could do maybe what? A mile of city streets if you had to redo them. I mean, certainly in my neighborhood, they need to go all the way down to the foundations. That's a lot of work.
Certainly in the long term, that is a good mechanism to do.
So perhaps that
Not
could
solve the problem for this immediate.
No, it doesn't.
concern.
No, it doesn't. But I think that we could certainly insist that that the money that is set aside be used in a timely manner. I mean, I think maybe Brett's suggestion was the best, that we prioritize, that we ask DPW to prioritize where sidewalks are mostly needed, rather than the nearest sidewalk to your development, because that may be.
Well, I just wanted, because the board had done this before with those apartments.
Yes.
Somewhere nearby, so I was trying to track that to be consistent. But I more or less agree with your position that it should be where DPW thinks a sidewalk would be helpful and beneficial
Right.
for the public safety, not necessarily in the
Gotcha.
general.
And this can easily be used the same way that any money that's brought in, whether it be a grant or a donation, anything like, it's the same way that it would be expended, put into the.
It can be earmarked.
It can be absolutely earmarked for, in a budget. If it's used, it's great. If it's not used, it's still there. It's pretty simple.
Okay. Thank you.
And
You would
thank you,
know
and
more.
thank you
I've
very
never
much.
presented a budget.
Thank you for much for your consideration.
Thank you for your patience.
Is that entrance a private road?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Do the school
Yes.
buses go up in there? So the kids will need to be picked up. This is affordable housing. I'm assuming there will be a bunch of kids in there
It is
because
market rate housing.
when we were talking about the plans, someone had brought up a playground area and stuff. So the kids are gonna have to walk down to the end of the road
Right. And
on
there's a
Province Street.
sidewalk on the drive.
Yep.
Right.
There's a sidewalk that runs all the way down to Growth Road. They could have a pickup area on the cul-de-sac of Growth Road, and the sidewalk runs the internal loop of sidewalk to every building, and the sidewalk goes all the way directly to Growth Road.
I would think that would be the safer alternative, frankly.
Than trying to be out on Province Street.
Build them a little hut.
It's all
Yep.
Pick up on Growth Road.
We don't,
Wait,
we do not control bus routes.
Yeah.
Don't go
Right,
there.
right.
It's
No, no,
not
no, no,
even
no.
go there.
I'm just thinking because I mean, I understand what you're saying, but there are stormwater management techniques where you can put a sidewalk down there. It's going to be a little inconvenient to your plan, but I mean, it's not a end all. Okay, I was just wondering.
In this case, without going to abutters or doing additional, like having additional permissions from other property owners, there is no room to do the drainage without having a ditch along Province Street. I mean, I went back and forth with Krista for a month and a half on this specific detention pond, and specifically the outlet, and specifically how we're going to get it to down Province Street. And it was a month and a half worth of work with her, and we actually relocated the road, and there was a lot of work put into this detention pond, and this was the only way that we could all come up with of getting it to exit the property.
All right. Thank you, John from Old Orchard.
Or does this have to then go?
We have a motion pending to reconsider, made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, so if I understand it, if you vote in favor of the motion to reconsider, then we are going to grant the sidewalk waiver with the understanding that the developer and the city are going to agree on a sum of money that will be roughly equal to what they would have had to build, that the city will use in a reasonable length of time to install sidewalk somewhere for the public's use. Anybody want to say so moved?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second.
I was just already.
Oh, we already have a motion. That's right. So we're I guess we can't really.
See, I don't believe the sidewalk's gonna come. If we let them go, the money goes, you're gonna just buy a new tire for their truck with that money or something, you know, I
Well-
don't believe it's gonna be used.
Well, that's why.
I think that's up to the, you know, I think we put a little more faith in our DPW director to manage that money appropriately and not, I just assume they're gonna do it inconsistently.
With the maker.
What's asked for.
Well,
With the
beyond
maker.
that money has to be accepted by the council.
Right.
And the council can determine how that money is going to be used. In other words, they can direct the Director of Public Works to use it, to find a location and use it.
You know, let's go a mile down the road where there is a sidewalk and continue it up the hill another 130 feet.
Well, and that may
Yeah.
well be it, but all I'm trying to say to you is, they're not going to be buying tires, I assure you, if we do what they're asking here.
It's
So-
not going into the general fund, it's
No.
going into a fund for sidewalks.
This is like a TIF, you know,
Yeah.
a TIF fund or, you know.
So who was the maker of the motion? Was it Bruce?
Second, Bruce made the motion.
Okay, so Bruce, would you agree to add the language about the sidewalk?
Yes.
So the maker of the motion has agreed to add the language about the sidewalk calculation and the fund. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Opposed? All right, we had a unanimous vote tonight. Never thought it would happen.
I believe if you wanted to tonight, you could vote to change the date on the completion. Just make a motion to.
Oh, all right. Yeah, since we have reconsidered that.
So moved on motion.
Motion to change the completion date to
2025.
May 7th,
2025.
2025. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by flapping your arms. Okay. Another unanimous vote. It's a good way to end the night. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Patience. And John, the saltwater taffy, don't do it.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Don't go there.
Thanks, John.
And that bar at the end of the pier. Do that.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second, third, motion is adjourned. Meeting is adjourned.